Okay, we're live.
Why?
Hello, everybody in the chat room. Here's the chat room,
Hello.
by the way, Matt.
Oh, cool.
And the people that are blue and have the wrench are moderators, but it really is not necessary anymore because this is unlisted, so it's not a public feed right now, and so we don't have any what do you call them, trolls
Trolls.
that we used to have when this thing was public.
Bad
people. Yeah,
That
very
was,
bad. So we're
it was
we're
amusing and then just very annoying. So
yeah, very.
Despite the conversation, something in there about cervical something or the other.
Whoa,
That's supposed to be in there.
Okay.
Cervical collar. I don't know what that is.
no, that's
but
for your neck. Cervical.
Oh, okay, all right. But you're a doctor, aren't you,
Yeah.
Steph? So
And actually,
know
that's
that.
I
Okay.
deal with a lot of neck cervical issues.
Okay, that's cervix. Got it.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, never mind. Thinking of something else.
Yeah.
Let's see.
We'll work on your medical terminology later.
Oops.
Okay.
I'm
My
just
parents did
kidding.
both in medicine too. It's a shame.
Okay. So Steph basically is the head of human relations, HR. So she's the one that kind of keeps us all aligned.
I fail
as
miserably
best
most
as
days.
she can, which is not very. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
not
it's not.
normally very successful.
No.
Okay. Let me make sure that we have all our recordings going in this application.
Jeff, I've had to make a new session, so I'm just looking at my thing. Format is ACC 256 stereo MP4A.
You don't need to have 256. Make it 128.
128. Okay, got it. Thank you.
And does it say more compatible, the M4A?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to momentarily turn off the audio hijack and then set up the recorders and then restart so they're all starting at the same time.
Okay.
And if you'll push that red button over there, yeah. All right.
I've got my clapperboard.
I do too.
I've only got my nose strapped in it a couple of times.
Yeah, careful. It is a hazard a little bit.
It is very
Appendages.
fingers, noses, willies. You don't have that problem, but
Well, that's why I just said appendages.
I'm very doctorly.
I know, right? Pull out the thesaurus.
Pull out your appendage.
Now that doesn't sound very doctorly. So
Oh, that's better. Nice bit of brandy. A little bit of
brandy in your
Martin.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah,
little
brandy in my coffee.
Jade
Oh,
IPA.
Jade.
Mhm.
Okay.
Very nice.
Now.
And I have some bison meatballs that I'm working on for late lunch, early dinner. That I
That's a spicy meatball.
they're a little
Oh,
spicy.
do you have that same commercial?
No, I was watching The Mask. Wasn't that when he said spicy?
Oh, because he
popped down a
he
pot.
is he is
referencing-
referring to the referencing that classic. What was that, Chef Boyardee?
I think it was Chef Boyardee.
Yeah.
Spicy meat.
Ooh, that's a spicy meatball. Or maybe that was for Alka-Seltzer or something.
Who
I don't
knows?
know. Who knows?
Something.
Yeah. All right. So in studio we have a special guest star with us. Hello, everybody in the chat room, and he's my
Hi, everybody.
Current first officer, and I forced him because he's on probation and he had no choice.
He looks just like a captain.
Yeah, he does. He's
It's the
very
gray hair. There's
distinguished.
a little bit of silver in my hair.
There you go. So another silver fox.
All right.
Oh,
We don't talk about the Silver Fox. Isn't he the one that crashed that 747 on NDB approach?
Oh yeah, never mind. Not that one.
I
Not
must
that.
do. I must do that one as a plane tail because no
That
one
would
seems
be a
to
good
know
one.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're recording. Obviously, the Hangout's going. Sorry, you have to hold your microphone because I didn't bring a. I wasn't expecting.
expect you to lug around another
It was-
stands.
Okay. So that's recording, and audio
I'm recording.
Jack is recording, and Steph, are you recording?
I am recording.
Okay. What you need?
I was looking. Where is the computer for this?
Oh, it's down there.
Oh,
So this is a new thing.
okay.
I've,
is what you're talking about? Isolating the noise? Or
I'm
something?
isolating
Okay,
the noise,
got it.
so I'm I'm using an external monitor. They're going, what, Jeff? Are you doing something different again?
Oh yeah, I was just going to
Yes.
say.
All
I
I
need
see is
the
a keyboard
300.
monitor here. I
The
was
normal is
wondering
that we
where
have
all
a
this
new
setup was.
setup, a different setup.
Yeah, every
300
time's a new setup. That's kind of
302 shows, 302 different setups.
So today I'm trying something a little different.
That's okay. I admit to it. I have a problem.
We love you,
Okay.
Jeff.
Well, we all know your real reason for doing the podcast in the first place. So
The
Just to
gadgets,
play-
right? That's what you told me, right? The
Yeah.
electronics.
To play with all the gadgets. Okay.
Yep.
So since we have to do a show, or we should do a show, I guess we can start.
Do you want to
wait.
clap yet?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Okay. Gonna go 3, 2, 1, clap. You see the latency.
Yes.
Actually, theirs was pretty close, so that's good. That'll help. All right. Oh, by the way, Dana issues his regrets for not being able to join us today, and it was just scheduling didn't work out to have all 4 of us together today. He is in the midst of a trip on a break, I think, between flights in Atlanta and about to head down to Miami or something like that. So he wishes he could be here with us, but oh well. Next time, right, Dana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Christmas is coming.
Yes. Oh, there's Saint Nick.
How appropriate.
Yeah, there's nothing saintly about this guy.
Hang on, I used to be a choir boy. You can't say that.
there used to be something.
Wait a minute. Choir boy and sainthood is not necessarily equivalent.
Oh, we always thought so.
I don't think it was ever equivalent.
When we were holding our little hands like this, wearing our robes, wandering around the church in a big long procession, singing our hearts out, we thought we were marvelous.
Well, I'm sure you were. Let me get a sound check here for the music.
Flight 209, you're clear for takeoff.
That should work. All right. Radio check, please, says Brian. By the way, the chat is about 25, 30 seconds behind us. So if you ask them a question, it takes a while for the answer to show up. If they bother to answer, and if they happen to be paying attention to
Usually
anything
they're
that we're
talking about
doing.
something completely different.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they have.
They have their own little private time on that chat.
Yeah.
And
All
sometimes
right.
we join in and also don't know what's going on during the show.
It's the common thing.
Yeah.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 302.
Flight 209, you're clear for takeoff. Roger. LA departure 123.9.
Roger. Request detected.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 505 in the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. In this episode, wrong runway landing attempt at John F. Kennedy, Boeing versus Bombardier tiff continues, recent fume events, American Airlines Christmas holiday glitch resolved, more news, your feedback in the latest Plain Tales installment, Coca, Abel, Peter, Tokyo, Nan, Item, Canada, King. That's catchy. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seatbacks in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 302 is ready for pushback. All right, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast, and I'm a captain for a major legacy carrier based in the United States. And joining me is...
Doctor? Doctor?
Doctor.
Doctor? Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
She's in the beautiful Carolinas. She's a doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and most importantly, commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot. I remembered. Dr. Steph.
I was going to say, at least most importantly for this show, I don't think anyone really cares too much else about the rest of it. Maybe the skydiving part, because it's loosely affiliated, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great to be back for episode 302. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Looking forward to a
right.
great show.
Well, we are as well. It won't happen, but we're looking forward to one anyway. And also joining us from his expansive country estate southwest of London, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Oh, ho, ho, Merry Christmas. You forgot the final bit for this time of year, because I'm like a part-time Santa in the big department stores around here. So, I fill my time when I'm not flying and not taking pictures. And
No, that is not true. Although I think it's believable, but I know it's not true.
Well, and before we started, he claimed that he was saintly, I think. So
Yeah.
we definitely
Yes,
know.
Saint Nicholas.
In name only.
Well, that is my name and that is my persona. What more can I say?
Yes.
We'll bring up the old curmudgeon later. So
No, not at Christmas. The old curmudgeon does not come out at Christmas time.
Okay, quiet on the set here. Joining me in studio, special guest host, former captain and head of pilot recruitment at a large regional carrier, currently a first officer at Acme Airlines, and most significantly, former host of NBC's Today Show, Matt Lauer. Oh, wait a minute. That's a different.
That's a different Matt.
Oh.
Yes. The name is the same. The spelling is the same.
Hey,
That
Matt.
is not me.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We'd rather have you instead of the other guy. that
I would
does-
these days. I would hope so. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Welcome to the show, sir. And
thank you for having
he
me.
was just recently exposed to us. Well, I know. It's kind of rude, isn't it?
I think that was
And-
the other way around, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, I don't know where you're going with that one,
Oh, I
but
don't know either.
yeah. So anyway, I told Matt about the show and the fact that we were recording the show today in the midst of our four-day trip, and when I heard where Matt had come from, I thought, hey, do you know a guy named Dana Colton, one of our APG crew members? And he goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. And so we started talking about the show, and one thing led to another. And by the way, you may have heard or may not have that in his intro here, he is used to be head of pilot recruitment at
Can I
the
have a
former
job? Can I have a
company.
job? Can I have a job? Please.
Yeah.
would not
Where
like-
were you 6 months ago, Nick?
Oh, I will.
Anyway, we
I know
we
somebody
often
wants a job.
we often get questions from folks, and we're not always sure about stuff. So Matt and I have been talking over a breakfast buffet about recruitment and stuff, and wow, it's some really eye-opening stories that
Yeah.
probably can't be told on the show. But yeah, things are crazy out there.
It is certainly crazy in the regional side of things as far as the hiring and recruitment is concerned. It's the pilot shortage. Everybody has different arguments on both sides. What's caused and whether the reality of it. But I think it definitely exists, just in different parts of the industry, and is impacting them differently. But at the regionals, it was real. There's no question about it. And it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's why I'm glad to be done with it, and over here just flying planes around again. But I enjoyed it when I did it. But yeah, it was a challenge, no question about it.
And I mentioned on our last show that Markson had sent in some feedback asking about that issue regarding his misdemeanor and the driver's license thing in Maryland. And I think we got it right. He confirmed that he said, that's really not a big deal.
That's
you know.
small peanuts, I think.
You said I have what?
Small peanuts.
Wow,
Peanuts.
that's really rude.
I don't know if that's any better. No, that's not a big deal. That's not a big
How
deal.
about armed robbery? Is that acceptable? I'm just curious. I mean, armed robbery.
It really depends on how bad it
He's,
is.
you know
Nick,
what we
Nick
always
is
used to
asking,
say?
asking for a friend.
Yeah,
He's
I am.
looking for that job.
Asking for
Because there was this bloke with a
I heard that a lot too. Trust me. I said, "Oh, there's a friend of mine."
No,
I can-
who
I
has
can
a
tell you
banter
the
out.
applications that we got. What we would say about each application we get, which was many with issues like this, we'd say we just look at each one on a case by case basis, and something that might seem like a disqualifier right off the bat. I think in some situations we were forced to kind of to look at the specifics, the details of it, and make a decision. While initially you hear somebody has a misdemeanor or something like that. Felonies were a disqualifier, of course, but
armed robbery, that's pretty much
I
a
think
felony,
would be a
isn't
felony,
it? Yeah,
yes.
that's pretty serious.
Well, as the chat room says, only if you get caught.
That's true. I wouldn't admit to it then if you weren't arrested for it.
Yes, but
I'm such an honest bloke.
Yeah, you're a saint. All right, boy, that was that just
Delayed.
put everybody silent.
Not often we get a pause like that.
I know, it's very unusual. And I'm going to leave that one in. I'm not going to edit that one out. Just like, wow, what happened? Is this thing still
Just the
on?
awkward.
Yeah, very awkward. Pregnant pause, so to speak. So let's see. Why don't we get caught up? Steph, what have you been up to since the last show?
Oh, let's see. Not much. Still just working like crazy. I did mention last time that I was thinking about going flying over the weekend, and then that didn't happen. I went to a big college football game that happened here in town instead and consumed some alcoholic beverages. So that was actually a lot of fun. I'm not a fan of either of the teams. It was Clemson and Miami. They played here in Charlotte last weekend, but was hoping for a good football game. I feel like Miami didn't really show up to the football game, but it was mostly Clemson fans in the crowd anyway, since we're a little closer to Clemson, and it was fun to watch. So that was good.
Now, this guy right here of the University of Georgia. So, and University of Georgia and Auburn University played, sadly, for me.
Sadly for you,
on
yes.
Saturday.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My condolences to
Yeah,
Jeff.
but I was telling him, I really do think that Georgia had the better team all along, and I think that they're going to represent the Southeastern Conference very well.
I hope so. It's the East. It's the to share in some of the questions.
Yeah. All right. Very good. So you have plans to possibly get out and do some flying? Hello?
Yeah, I can kind of hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. It's
is
choppy
it
and
bad
intermittent.
again? I'm sorry.
I got the gist of what you were saying, so I'll just continue and answer that
Okay.
question that I think you asked me. Possibly on Sunday. Saturday for the day, I'm taking a day trip to Chicago to see one of my very best friends from grade school, just for the day, and catch up and hang out. And I keep looking at the weather forecast there, and now they're calling for snow in addition to the cold weather, so that'll be fun. But maybe on Sunday when I get back.
Okay. Technical pause here. I guess the people in the chat room are saying that everything is Skyping. So can you hear us at all right now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now. Like
Okay.
It
a
was
minute
for
ago,
about
it was
5
not good.
seconds, but it was.
Do you think I should just turn off the video completely?
What? And lose
You won't
your
see me, though.
your handsome visage?
Uh-huh.
Of course not.
Well, I mean, I want the sound to be somewhat decent. I'm going to go to very low bandwidth
You're
and get really pixelated.
You're fine for 90% of the time, Jeff. It's just
Okay.
occasionally when you cut out, you just like cut out completely. But it's
Yeah.
only for 5 seconds.
We can actually I can still see you like moving and talking. It's just I can't hear anything, so I'm trying to guess based on the 2 snippets of words
It's
that I
just
hear.
when Jeff is talking, right? It's not when I'm talking.
Correct.
That's the important.
That's the
Okay,
important
all right.
thing. Yeah. Right.
Liz says if you turn the video off, you can take your pants off, apparently.
Well, probably not a good idea when I'm with company, Liz. I think that would make him uncomfortable.
Oh,
Not pretty sure.
Oh, Christian, really? He says they only listen to about 90% of what you say anyway.
Okay, let's see. One of you folks that have the spanner wrenches, go ahead and boot
kick
Christian out of the chat room. That's it,
Bye,
brother.
Christian.
You're out of here.
That's it. Yeah, you only get,
Oh, I could do that, actually.
you only
Okay.
get one
So,
swing, and you missed.
whoa,
Yeah.
Liz, good grief! See what she said after that?
Don't you do it when you fly together? Well, we did until the latest about all these sexual
Yeah,
harassment.
they told me to
things.
stop doing that for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's just not acceptable.
In the summertime on our airplane, Jeff, I wish I could take my pants
No
off
kidding.
sometimes. I roll my pants up sometimes. Honestly, I do.
Need to add the shorts to the uniform.
Well, here's a true
absolutely.
story.
Shorts and
We
golf
had
shirt.
a captain who was flying A320s for our outfit for a season or two out of Athens. And because it was pretty damn hot out of Athens, he cut the legs off his uniform trousers and wore them as shorts.
Did HR have a talk with him?
Well, no one realized for quite a while because, he was kind of in this little outfit and no one saw him very often. And eventually someone spotted him. And I think he got read the riot act. But
That sounds
he got
like
away
a
with it.
psychological issue to me. Yeah. We've had some of those folks at our company over time. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's move on. Captain Nick, how have
Yes,
you
sir.
been since our last episode?
Fitting well, but a wee bit busy. Got back from San Francisco. That was a nice deadhead out, and then I operated home. Let one of my first officers do the landing because it's much simpler that way. I don't have to worry about reading anything or doing anything. I love that. And since then, I have been getting geared up for Christmas. So the lights are up around the house. Julia's done a great job doing that. She is popping into hospital for a short procedure, but it means that she'll be out of play for a few weeks after. So I've got a bit of compassionate leave from the company. Thank you very much indeed, Acme Red and my manager. You're a hero. That takes me through next week, probably the next show. And then I've got a quick 2-night Washington. If anyone wants a beer in Washington, I might try and organize a meetup, but I'm really keen to go for my first time to see the Udvahizi Center. Is that what it's
No.
called?
Try it again.
Udvahizi.
Udvar.
Hazy.
Hazy, I think it is.
Yes.
What language is that? I don't know.
It's not English, but that's how we pronounce it here.
It's Middle Eastern.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think.
right. Okay. Well, anyway, I want to go out there and see some airplanes. And I can only really do it on the Washington one or 2-nighter. So this is my chance. So if anyone wants to hold my hand and show me around the Udvahizi Center on my second day, that'd be great. No,
Where's your buzzer?
my
Udvar Hazy.
Udvahazi.
Hazy.
Thank you. Udvar Hazy. There
All
you
right.
go.
There you
When are you
go.
going to be there, Nick?
The Lufahazi Center. So I'm going to be. Oh, that's a damn good question. I should have. Had
Yeah, it
that
is a good
correct.
question.
Silly me. Okay, I get in on the 15th.
These
I've got
folks
the
at
16th.
Acme Red, the details are kind of
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
who cares?
16th.
Saturday the 16th. So I land on the 15th into Washington and I leave on the 17th. So 16th is my free day. I want to spend a lot of time out there. So if anyone fancies a day out there, I'm going to be wanting to see everything, photograph everything, do everything, and be absolutely brilliant. So if anyone knows the place well, I'd really appreciate a guide.
Okay. Speaking of meetups, and about the same time frame, we played it on the last episode. We won't play his audio feedback again, but First Officer Craig is going to be there. There's a big surprise, so don't tell anybody. He's going to surprise his fiancee, Ashley, on December 18th at about 6:30 at Brown's Restaurant in I think he said the Covent Gardens location in the London area, and they're going to meet up there for an APG meetup. And Nev is going to be present and accounted for, as well as I'm sure some other APG community members in the area. And so if you want to join them, you can contact Nev. It's probably the best thing to do. That way there are no spillages of the secret, the surprise for Ashley. But you can also contact First Officer Craig on Twitter, and that's FO Craig, and on Facebook he's Craig Pyzik, Pyzik. And so let's see, is Nev in the chat room with us here? No, I don't see him.
Didn't see him earlier.
Yeah,
and
Liz is saying-
I am so sad because it's like an hour on the train for me to get there. It would have been perfect. But I'm going to be in Washington. So
Yeah.
I'm
Nev
very
is there,
sorry.
but yes.
He is there. Yeah. Nev,
Yeah,
I
no,
might have something delivered to your house for you to take with you if you could manage that. That would be great in that case.
Is he talking to me?
No, he's
I'm
talking to Nev.
to Neville,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
UK social director.
I see. Okay. And then James asked a very funny question. Does Ashley listen to APG?
No, there's only the five of
not.
us, isn't it?
Are there some other people listening? I don't think so.
Nah.
Okay, so there you go. December 18th, 6:30 p.m., Brown's Restaurant. Did I get that right? Brown's Restaurant? Is that like a chain or something that you have over there?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever been there.
Well,
So
maybe,
that's Monday the 18th, is that?
whatever day that is. Yeah, I think that is
Okay.
a Monday
All
night.
right, fair enough. Okay.
All right, very good. Okay, anything else to talk about before we move on to the coffee fund?
I don't think so.
Not for me,
All
sir.
right, let's do it then. This is where you have to sing with me, Matt.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Poor Matt, he's going, what the heck have I gotten myself into?
I'm not familiar with this one.
Yeah. Well, Matt, if you start listening to the show, you'll become intimately
I guess so.
familiar with this song. It's the Java Jive, and we play it because this is where we talk about the coffee fund. Now, you may notice that our podcast, unlike a lot of others out there, is not supported by advertising. It is 100% ad-free. It's only supported by your donations. So we have a great group of people that already support us financially, and they are part of the Coffee Fund cadre. And if you want to join them, and I think you should, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. There you'll find out a couple of different ways to do that. And the classic method, the original Coffee Fund via PayPal, is one option. And since the last episode, we have a contributor to that, a very generous contribution by Jay Kahn. Thank you very much, sir. And the other way that you can is via become a patron of the arts.
Sure.
Well, this is not really much of an art, but you can become a patron of the show anyway, and you can do that by again learning about that at airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And Patreon is it's a wonderful service where you can pledge a certain amount of money per episode and then become satisfied with your financial support of the show. And since the last show, that's right, silence. No new patrons. Oh well, that's okay. We got a great group of patrons already, and if you want to join them, again, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. I love the APG community, coffee and tea, and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Boy. Yeah.
Stand by for news.
Sorry, I was looking at the chat room, and Nev posted a very interesting comment there. Proof that it's possible to get pregnant whilst listening to APG. I'm not sure. I must have missed something there.
Wait, what?
I
I
swear,
was
I'm
ignoring
reading.
the chat room for. I see it there too. I see it there.
Oh, the pregnant
The
pause.
pause, the pause they're referring to.
Very clever.
You had a little hiccup in your audio there.
I know. That's okay. The audio, what we're recording here, though, is pristine. Okay? So if you're watching via the YouTube video, sorry. It's sucking right now. But
Well,
listen to the audio.
I'm looking good. I don't know about you.
Well, I mean, you look
I think
great.
I look pretty good too. I mean, maybe
No,
not as
you
good
guys-
as
You always look good, Steph.
Aw, thanks.
Well, you know, I didn't mean you all. I meant the sound quality of the coming from me.
Yeah,
I thought you just meant the show in general.
Well, I do mean that, actually.
Okay. No, that's not true.
Let's start with the first item in the news folder. Volaris A319 at New York just yesterday, December 5th, lined up with runway 13 right instead of 13 left on the visual at the visual Canarsie approach. And again, that's Kilo Juliet Foxtrot Kilo. And that is a big international airport in New York. And boy, I've never heard of this before. I mean, how often?
That never happens.
How often does it happen?
Never happened to me anyway.
Yeah, me neither. Yet. Anyway,
Well,
Volaris.
I watched a Qantas 74400 do it, and I was in the queue, about 3 to go, and I was actually taking pictures of the skyline, because when you're lined up to depart from that runway, the New York skyline's ahead of you, the sun's setting,
That's
the
beautiful.
sky's coming around on the Canarsie. Yeah, it looks fantastic. So I was snapping a few pictures away because we were like stationary, and there were still a few ahead of us. And one of which is this 747 coming around. I thought, he's turning a bit tight for 13 left, isn't it? And as he pointed towards us, suddenly the power comes on, the nose comes up, and he starts to go around. So I'm thinking, I think I know what happened.
So would you please tell our dear listeners, Captain Nick, the basic setup of this approach?
Well, okay. It's a bit like torture, your medieval torture. At least certainly for us.
It's not really where I was going with that. But
Big jet.
Okay, go ahead.
Big jet pilots, but rather than have a nice, neat, straight-in approach to the runways 13, which they do have, they have got instrument landing systems set up at JFK for both 13 left and right. They would much prefer to bring you in on a non-precision approach, and then they abandon you. That approach abandons you some miles from the airport, and you have to follow a series of visual cues to then track across the ground and line yourself up with the runway. Now, there are 2 runways you can line up on, 13 right and 13 left. So you're doing a right-hand turn. If you do a slightly tight turn, you'll end up pointing at the wrong runway. If you do a nice slack turn and follow the correct visual cues, you'll end up on the correct runway, which this guy was aiming for, 13 left. To be absolutely fair, it's probably in poor weather, you're less likely to line up on the wrong runway, because you're gazing at the ground in front of you, trying to follow the road, and then trying to follow that strange stadium, and then looking for the hotel, and you're looking for the series of flashing lights that lead you through to the threshold, and you're concentrating on that. But on a really nice clear day, I suspect you're sort of gazing around, looking at the airport, and then this very appealing runway 13 right pitches up, and you can see it quite clearly. And it's very easy just to turn onto it and think, that must be my runway. Whereas, in fact, if you're supposed to trog on a little further and do quite a gentle turn, not a very high rate of descent, because the drop-off point from the non-precision approach leads you quite low for 13 left. So you sort of flatten out for a few miles and then start your 3-degree slope. And as you ease around that gentle turn, eventually the runway kind of appears from behind various buildings and parts of the airport. And then you can see it line up on it. So it's not unexpected for people to just grab the first runway they see. But if they've briefed the approach properly, got decent notes in their company manuals and things, and they follow the correct visual cues, 13 left should appear, rather than the tight turn that takes you on at 13 right.
I rather enjoy that approach in reasonable conditions in VMC, but you're right. When the weather is down to close to minimums for that approach, the VOR approach, and then it does kind of tend to be a little bit nerve-wracking and stressful. But I think it's a lot of fun.
Well, on your airplane, Jeff, it kind of would be, because you're on a nice, neat, maneuverable jet, and you obviously enjoy hand flying. There's a challenge there on that approach that is not apparent on most straight-in approaches, which are to be absolutely fair as a yawn. Sometimes when you're at feeling a little bit weary and the weather's a bit donkel, and there's a stiff wind blowing, and you're not really thinking, oh my God, and what's more, from our arrival over the Atlantic, we've got to go all the way around the backside of the airport to get there. So it's another, I don't know, 20 or 30 mile track miles, which really you don't want. You'd rather just slide straight into the 2-2s or something, but or 3-1s, but there you go.
Well, I think that is probably likely what the Volaris pilot crew had hoped for, but instead they were assigned this VOR runway 13 left approach, and they were coming in to land. They lined up on the wrong runway. A little bit of audio if you want to listen to it.
Tower. Good afternoon, Polaris 880. You are runway 13 left.
Polaris 880, Kennedy Tower, good morning or good afternoon. Wind 170 at 16, runway 13 left, cleared to land.
Here to runway 13 left, Polaris 880.
Brickyard 4231, wind 170 at 16, that's 22, runway 13 right, cleared for takeoff. Endeavor 4089, Kennedy Tower, runway 12 right, line for wait.
Up to the wrong runway.
Go around.
Polaris 880, go around, turn left, heading 100.
Left heading 100, Polaris 880.
Brickyard 4231, sorry about that, that guy lined up for the wrong runway there. Do you fire any assistance? Brickyard 4231, roger, turn left 1 able. Are you able to taxi back for departure, or do you have to do any checks or anything? And Endeavor 4089, that guy's out of the way, and we went right line for wait. I think that was you who called it out at first, right? Thanks for the call, man, really appreciate that.
So yeah, some some heads up, and I think we all we all do that. Anytime that any of us take a runway, we always kind of look to our right and say, final's clear. And then in this case, they probably went, final, oh, no, final's not clear. Looks like somebody's trying to land on this runway. And so unfortunately for Brickyard, by the way, in the news they were saying it was a Delta Airlines flight, but of course that was one of Delta's, our sister, a company very much like the airline that we fly for at Acme. They have some flying done by some regional partners, and this is one of Delta's regional partners. The Air Shuttle, I think, is
it's Republic, name, right? Actually.
Republic, okay.
Republic is Brickyard.
Okay, Brickyard.
There was an error in the, I think it's an error in the Aviation Herald.
Oh, okay.
It does say Shuttle America, but it's actually a Republic airline.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so some good SA situational awareness by the crews, and no harm, no foul. The Volaris flight was sent around. They got some vectors around, and they landed on 22 left, I believe, and I'm sure they're going to have some splaining to do, and maybe some paperwork to fill out. But
tell me, Jeff and Matt, have you guys ever done a go round at JFK?
Me, no. Jeff,
I don't believe I have.
Okay. I mean, it happens quite regularly. I'm just wondering how many go-arounds actually go to the 4,000 feet, which are, generally speaking, the go-around altitude. Because all the go-arounds that seem to happen in our company, they just want to grab you at like 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet. And quite honestly, that is... It is way earlier to go around for a big airplane. By the time you've translated, got everything sorted, you're in the middle of the cleanup, expecting to go up to 4. They just want to give you a heading and give you a level off, and it's really comes unless you're aware of the fact that they're likely to grab you and give you a radar heading and an early level off. It can come as a real surprise.
I think next time you should go in on initial contact, say, in the event of a go-around, we were going to fly the published missed approach procedure.
Well, I don't object to it.
They'll probably laugh.
Yeah, they probably will. Yeah, it's just that if why don't they publish a procedure that is more closer to what they're going to do? Because after all, we spend all this time briefing and preparing ourselves for something that never happens.
Well, in my briefing, I always, talk about the published missed approach procedure, and then I say, or we'll just do whatever Tower tells us to do, and that's going to be the most likely thing. You're just going to.
Yeah. Fair enough.
There was a change to our procedure recently, wasn't there, for visual approaches or non-island? No, we're not doing an instrument approach where there's a published missed approach. We're supposed to, the start of any go-around anyway is supposed to be what, runway heading to pattern altitude?
Yeah, pattern altitude. So you have to think 1,500 feet above the ground, so whatever the elevation is, add 1,500 feet to it. And I usually have to pull the calculator out to do that.
Right.
But
some quick mental math. Yeah. It's never quick, right?
But, before you even have a chance to go up to the pattern altitude, they're probably already telling you what altitude to climb to and which heading to fly and that kind of thing. just to kind of get you out of everybody's way. But anyway, good essay by the was it Endeavor or Envoy? I've forgotten now. The one
Endeavor getting cleared on the runway.
Endeavor,
yeah, whoever was next to it.
Good job, Endeavor. All right. So, everybody that listens to the show, or most everybody that listens to the show, has been, aware of the little tiff going on between Boeing and Bombardier, which now involves Airbus and others. And it's getting kind of, it's just not getting any better, I guess I could say. This, I saw this the other day, Aeromexico. Actually, that's the one I don't want to do. I want to do this next one here, Canada. Canada is scrapping a plan to buy 18 Boeing Company Super Hornet fighter jets amid a deepening dispute with the U.S. Aerospace Company. 3 sources familiar with the matter said on Tuesday. This is from Reuters. Instead, the Liberal government will announce next week it intends to acquire a used fleet of older Australian F-18 jets, probably one that Nick used to fly.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Jeff, because I was tweeting with Grant from Australia, and he was going to my old base, and I said, "Oh, well, while you're there, see if you can find 21-4." Well, A21-4, which was the registration of the aircraft that had my name on when I was flying for 77 Squadron out there. And he just came back to me today and said, I saw your jet. It's still flying. It was getting airborne for an exercise. I was up in the tower watching it. And he said, you'll never believe it. They think they're going to sell it to the Canadians.
Oh, my gosh. I was just joking.
No, I was absolutely spot on. So I'll tell you what, if Liz ever gets a chance to look around the Canadian F-18s, perhaps she'll keep an eye out for my old jet, which might be up there.
Liz, I think you should contact the government and tell them to take a very close look at that particular tail.
I used to go out and polish it when no one was looking, It was a sweet airplane. Yeah.
Nick polishes a lot of things.
Dirty the bust.
Ba-doom, bam. What?
Where's Matt when you want to?
Yeah.
Family show.
Anyway, so, the relations between Boeing and Canada are kind of getting acrimonious. And now they've, looking for other options. And including, at the end of this article, they talk about being more open now to possibly taking a look at the F-35 from Lockheed Martin. So I'm not sure if that's a direction they're going to go or not. That's awfully expensive, that particular fighter. But anyway, so you have...
They'd be better off getting Typhoons, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, if you're gonna start siding with different countries, then I think maybe that's an option for sure. Yeah, and I'm sure it's a lot cheaper than the F-35. Of course, the role is a little bit different and the capabilities and such.
Capabilities for sure.
But so anyway, so you got that, and then the other thing is, of course, just to remind everybody, the Federal Trade Commission basically said that they were going to start slapping a very, very high import tariff on these Bombardier jets, and again, our sister airline Delta has an order in for like 75 of these things, and basically they're going to be about 300%, 3 times the price that Delta has agreed to pay. And so now people are doing whatever they can to figure out a way to avoid that extremely high tariff. And one of those ways might be Delta has a partner in their, what do you call that, that group of airlines that network or
another name,
code share, or they whatever partners. Yeah. Aeromexico is partnered with Delta in that, and Delta owns a stake in the Mexican carrier, something like 49%, almost 50, just shy of 50%. And apparently they're talking with Aeromexico to accept delivery of some of the 75 C series planes that were ordered by Delta in 2016, again in a way to avoid the extremely high tariff. Now, I think the Federal Trade Commission is going to meet early in 2018 to basically finalize whatever decision they come up with. So it's not a done deal, but it looks like they're positioning to be able to implement procedure to avoid paying these tariffs if necessary, if the FTC continues to uphold that extremely high tariff. So that's, I thought, was interesting strategy by Delta Airlines to again avoid. And basically, the CEO for Delta said, we are not going to pay the 300% tariff, and we are going to take the jets. So I'm not sure what your definition is of take the jets. Maybe it's taken them by one of our partners. I don't know.
Interesting. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and some very inventive people, I think, are thinking out ways to get around this.
Yeah. On the last episode, we had some feedback from someone saying that we weren't taking these fume events seriously, and I noticed recently on the Aviation Herald website, that's avherald.com, some more fume events, not smoke and fume events, but just fume events where people become incapacitated, usually not involving the pilot crew, but sometimes the cabin crew and passengers. A recent Lufthansa Boeing 747-400 experienced the odor of dirty old socks, which I kind of actually like. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
I'm joking. The odor dissipated during climb out of Denver. The aircraft continued the flight to Frankfurt. During the descent into Frankfurt, about 15 to 30 minutes prior to landing, the odor occurred again. A number of passengers felt unwell. A number of passengers even vomited. A number of cabin crew also felt unwell with headaches, nausea, and eye irritations. According to the information given to the Aviation Herald, one flight attendant is still on sick leave following the flight. I guess that same airplane had a very similar occurrence just 2 days later, Flight 447. So Germany's BFU has been informed of the occurrence, and they're investigating. Another Lufthansa flight, this time an Airbus 321 from Frankfurt to Barcelona on November 29th, had fumes on board shortly after departure prior to arrival in Barcelona. They made a safe landing in Barcelona. The aircraft remained on the ground for 2.20 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes, then departed for the return flight, blah, blah, blah. According to the information that the Aviation Herald received on December 4th, the entire crew went to see a doctor after landing. Immediate health issues were identified by any crew member. Days later, accrued symptoms related to the fume event and is currently on sick leave. And then finally, Brussels Airbus A330-200 also had a fume event, and we'll put the link to that episode in the show notes. But interestingly, I did a search on Aviation Herald for fume events, and then I got a lot of smoke and fume events, and I basically eliminated all those. And it seems that very few fume events occur with U.S. airlines, and it seems like the concentration is mostly European and UK carriers. And I don't know if there's any kind of correlation there or what's going on.
Do all American airplanes smell of smelly socks?
I guess we're just kind of used to that.
Yeah, we're just
That's a
we don't
common
even
smell,
notice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
that's probably why.
Perhaps you just can't tell the difference between a smelly sock oil and smelly socks. I don't know.
Well, I was told by somebody that I should probably wear a new pair of clean socks every day, and I was not aware of that.
A new pair? God, you mean?
Well, not a new pair, a clean pair. A clean pair.
Oh, okay.
And Matt informed me when
I was going to say that was a sock salesman must have told you that.
After the show, HR is going to have a meeting about basic hygiene.
When I took my shoes off the other day, and Matt kind of you started screaming. What's wrong?
But you didn't even notice you've just become immune to the...
Right. Did we turn the packs on, or did Jeff take his shoes off? Jeff had taken his shoes off.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know why that would be, Jeff. A lot of these events have occurred on Airbus, but they're more engine related than aircraft type related. I don't know, is there a preponderance of engines that are prone to it in the UK? I'm not sure. I have got a feeling that once the word goes around an airline that these are occurring, you tend to get a slightly higher concentration because people are alert to it and they're watching for it or smelling for it. And when it happens, they realize that there's a problem, and they obviously want to make sure that their aircraft are as safe as possible for their passengers, so they make a note of it. If people are relatively ignorant of the problem, then they're much less likely, I think, to note it. But some of these seem quite severe, so they definitely do occur. And when they occur in a bad case, I think they can be quite debilitating for the crew. The Airbus that I fly recirculates about 70% of the air. Having said that, it does go through a very efficient filter during its recirculation, and that would most likely take out any aerosol particles, because it can take out anything down to and including a bacteria cell. So it should take out any aerosol particles that are floating around. But whether the smell remains and some of the toxicity, if the molecules are small enough, I suspect that might be the case. We have certainly in our outfit had a number of them in the past, but not in the last 10 years can I remember one happening, because our engines are all modified, new seals put on in the suspect areas, and they've been very good since.
Have you ever had any fume events at all?
No, not on the dirty sock smell I'm very familiar with. But,
yeah, I've been smelling that for years, and again, not my own socks, but on the airplane.
After you de-ice, sometimes you smell that syrupy smell. But
they call that water separator. I think that's where it comes from. I think they said
something with doing with moisture. I can't remember.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll kind of keep our eyes and ears open for what's going on in that world. I know there are a bunch of folks that claim that aerotoxic syndrome is a real thing, and perhaps it is, and maybe I'll die soon of aerotoxic syndrome. You never know.
I hope not.
That's the good news.
That would be sad.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Would that be sad?
Christmas? We would hate to have
so sad. It's a sad situation, and it's getting more and more absurd.
Speaking of getting more and more absurd, the show is. Let's see. Oh, we talked about that Airbus A380 that had the engine failure back in September and has been stuck at Goose Bay for about 2 months or so. And then they were going through all this elaborate procedure to try to put a dummy engine in the failed engine's position, and doing all this training to fly on 3 operating engines, etc. And it looked like today was going to be the day that they're going to fly it back to Paris. And so I was looking at Flight Radar 24. They were posting this on Twitter today. I think it took off at 12:15, and by now I'm sure it's already in Paris. It turns out that they actually ended up fixing the engine that they had hanging on the bad engine's position. I don't know if that was a new engine or if they just fixed the engine that was broken or what, but according to the latest reports on Flight Radar 24, the engine, the airplane, the flight operated with all 4 engines operating. So it looks like they have finally, limped that airplane back to Paris, and they're going to, I guess, do whatever else they have to do to make it airworthy for passenger service. So I thought I'd mention that. Anything to add on that?
No, it just seemed like it was there forever, like 60-something days, 64 days or something. Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, I'm just confused, because you can fly an engine out pretty easily using one of the big heavy lift cargo boys. And is it a problem getting the equipment to fit it? Because it's such a damn big aircraft. Perhaps you need specialist engine changing rigs to be able to do an engine swap, but it seems a little bit unlikely. I don't know.
According to this Twitter feed that I'm looking at right here, which is a couple of hours old, Air France has just confirmed to us, Flight Radar 24, that Foxtrot Hotel Papa Juliet Echo is indeed operating on 4 engines back to Paris. It appears that the aircraft was able to be repaired to a state where a 3-engine ferry flight was not necessary. So after all that simulator time and training and everything else to do it with 3 engines, and again, as Captain Nick says, it doesn't seem to me to be that big of a deal to fly an airplane basically empty with 3 engines. But
or maybe just, I mean, you could fly it somewhere else maybe if you didn't want to cross the Atlantic with it, somewhere where you could get the repairs done.
Yeah, I mean, the 340 had a 3-engine ferry procedure. I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure, actually. I don't know if the 380 does. Obviously, perhaps not.
Maybe not.
But, no.
Anyway, well, good news is looks like it's either on the way home or already there. So it'll, I'm sure, be back in service soon, carrying passengers and just purring away in the sky. And our last piece of news in the news folder is American Airlines have solved the pilot shortage glitch at a price. According to aerotime.aero, American Airlines announces that it has solved the problem, and we kind of surmise that the way they're going to solve this is that they throw enough goodies and money at the pilots that it'll be solved. And that's exactly what happened. That initial offer of 150% of their normal pay rates, as we said, Dana and I said, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to give up my time off for Christmas at 1.5 times my normal pay rate. I'm going to have to get more than that, especially those of us at Acme. We don't even have the 1.5. It's 2.0 times. That's the green slip pay. And apparently that was the magic number for the American Airlines pilots. They worked out a deal where the folks that want to pick up those flights that weren't covered, approximately 15,000, will now be covered by folks getting double pay. So
I'm sure they gobbled them up once it hit 200.
Yep. So a happy ending. So if you have a flight over the holidays on American Airlines, rest assured, unless something else happens like weather or whatever, you're gonna be just fine.
Well, I love the way they say, if in short, if Santa is flying, so is American. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you guys. If flying American, I'm not flying on Christmas Day, so that's
Apparently, they did not contact the Airline Pilot Guy show for clarification on that.
No, they said they didn't contact St. Nicholas.
All right. Well, that's it for the news. So now it's time for the best part of the show, which of course is your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Thank you. Okay. Sent this in while Australia, Boeing's October 20th, 2017, bird and rabbit strike at once. This from the Aviation Herald. What? A bird and rabbit strike? How can that possibly happen? Any guesses?
Someone threw a bird and a rabbit at the aircraft.
That's a possibility.
Big bird carrying a rabbit.
Yes.
Yes, that's it.
So the rabbit was riding the bird with a little set of reins on its back.
Or it was being carried in that bird.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but a while back there was an incident of a bird/fish strike where the bird was carrying a very large fish. And that's how.
I love it.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll put a link to this Aviation Herald incident in on the show notes. But apparently they felt vibrations shortly after takeoff. The aircraft leveled off at 5,000 feet. The crew advised an eagle carrying a rabbit had just impacted their number 1 engine. And so they came back to land safely.
There you go.
All right. Not much more to say about that.
Say, Steph, you missed the cue there. What's up, Doc?
Oh, I did. Oh, I'm sorry.
I missed it too.
Damn.
That's funny.
Let's see here. Sealview sent in some questions for us. Hello, APG crew and community. Sealview here. Awesome podcast. Lovely old pilots, plane tales. Thank you, Captain Nick. Big fan out there, Sealview is, of the plane tales, as well as many others. I've been out of touch with the past 4 episodes or so, but I promise I'll get to them. I've started logging time in a lovely Cessna 172, and it is a lovely little aircraft. the staple of student pilot, making great memories of humble beginnings. So I gave a couple of questions. Number one, can the crew talk about what got them interested in aviation? And we've kind of talked about that before on previous episodes, but I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about that? What got you interested in aviation? Steph, what was it that got you interested?
So I was always interested in aviation, but for some reason, and I don't even know if I have the answer to this, in high school and college, then I took a turn for science and medicine and all of that. So that's how I got into doing medical school stuff and going down that route. But no, I've always been interested in aircraft and aviation and all that type of stuff. And then the opportunity came up when I was actually in residency to take flight lessons. So that's how I got officially into aviation. So,
Captain Nick.
I grew up in an aviation family. Yeah, my father was a World War II pilot and continued on as an airline pilot. And so it was kind of, my brother was oldest brother, 8 years older. He was an aircraft engineer. So it was just kind of standard fare over the dinner table to talk about airplanes. So I guess I just kind of just fell into I won't say fell into, but I got incredibly interested in it. And just pursued it as a career. I really did pursue it. So that was my way in.
Awesome. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, mine is, I think, uncommon. It's not the story like you guys told and that you typically hear from certainly airline pilots, in my experience anyway. No airline or no flying experience in my family whatsoever. I knew nothing about it, really didn't have an interest in it until about what Steph was saying, the time she decided to choose a career outside of aviation was when I made the decision to go into aviation. It was college. I was done with college. And I think I was a criminal justice major at the time, which scared the crap out of my mom. And I think it was my aunt who said, my mother must have had a conversation with saying, I think he wants to go in law enforcement or something. Can you talk him out of it? Is probably the conversation she had with her sister, my aunt. My aunt ended up, I think out of desperation, just started throwing out careers. And mentioned airline pilot. I, like many people, assume that you had to be military to be an airline pilot. But like many things that I become passionate about, if I'm not already, I started reading about it, realized you didn't have to be. You could be civilian trained, which I was. And, that's when I just became obsessed with it. And so it was a little later in life for me. I graduated college at University of Georgia, which had nothing aviation related. I was a speech communication major. Did all my training civilian, Part 61 is what it was called. Yep. Flight instructor for a very short time, and then came right into the airlines with the intent of ending up where I am today. So mine was a little different than I think many. So.
What was the first aircraft that you flew then?
Cessna 172.
172.
Venerable 172, yes. Yeah. The M model, I think mid-70s or something. We affectionately refer to them by, or had nicknames associated with the colors they were, which were typically, classically 70s colors, of course. One was orange, interior and out. The whole thing was orange, clad with orange. We called it the Great Pumpkin. Another one was blue. We called it Papa Smurf. That was a fuel-injected model, and Papa Smurf was very grumpy in the morning. He did not like to start if you didn't do it just right. But yeah, a fleet of 172s is what I did my primary training in.
Nice. Steph, same for you, or was it a 150?
172. Yep.
There you go.
My private pilot training in 172. So have had a lot of hours in that aircraft, 20364. So. Yep.
Was that your solo plane? You remember that
yep.
tail number?
Absolutely.
21515 was mine. I don't think anybody forgets that.
I don't have any idea.
You forgot? Well, number of years.
I barely remember what happened last week. So, Captain Nick, what was your first airplane that you flew?
First pilot aircraft, 150 Aerobat, Golf Bravo Alpha Charlie Papa was my solo craft, but I started flying on gliders. So the T-21 Zedberg and the T-31 were the two gliders I used to fly in the Air Cadets. So, one was a flying brick, and the other one was as big as a house. It was fun. Great times.
I think the first time I actually flew in an airplane and I was, given access to the controls was just last week. No, it was back when I was a teenager in Mobile, and a friend of my father's had an airplane. It was a Belanca. and I'm not sure, is Blanca the model or Blanca the name of the manufacturer, and then the model is something different. I don't know. But of course, I remember like the back of my hand, the tail number is November 654 Zulu Whiskey. I just made that up. I have no idea what the tail number was.
Sounds legit.
Yeah. But then I started flying with another fellow line boy at the Mobile Air Center who happened to also be a CFI. And I think it was mostly in 150s, 152s, that kind of thing. And then that was pretty much it until I went into the Air Force and into the flight screening program. And then we started flying the military version of the Cessna 172. What I always mess this up, a Muscalero or a Muscadero? Muscalero, I think, or something like that. We've talked about it on the show. It's just I don't remember, but and I have no idea what the tail numbers were on any of those either. So I think I've let everybody in the aviation community down. Maybe I'll pull out the old logbook and see if I can refresh my memory on that. And then what's your favorite aircraft that you flew and why? What's your favorite airplane, Matt?
Well, I don't have a long list like many people do just because my career was so short prior to the airlines. I trained at a 172, which is probably going to be my favorite just because of that was the first plane I flew. And then the Piper Seminole, the PA-44 Seminole, I did my multi-engine training in. I flew, a handful of other people's planes from Piper Malibu, it's a PA-46. I got to fly around a Cirrus and SR-22 when those first came out, but no time in that. So I think just because of the limited number I've flown, the 172 would have to be it.
I think that the SR-22 is the one that I would guess is Steph's favorite.
You might guess that, but it's
I'd
actually
be wrong.
You'd be wrong. I do love flying that aircraft. I'm in love with the Cirrus, but I think my favorite to fly was actually when I did my seaplane rating. And that was a Piper PA-12. So very similar looking to a Piper Cub.
But it's not a Cub.
Huh.
Not technically, no.
Oh,
It's a 1947 PA-12-150. So, yep.
Awesome.
Wow, that's cool.
Lane Street, thank you very much, sir, in the chat room. He comes up with, he saves me. The T-41 Mescalero is what the Air Force called those Cessna 172s. Thank you, sir. Nick, favorite aircraft?
Phantom. F4
Phantom.
Yeah, it has to be. Just that 20-ton fire-breathing monster.
Yeah. I would say the most exhilarating and most scared I've ever been in an airplane was the T-38 for me in pilot training, the advanced jet trainer. But probably the best overall airplane I've ever flown would have to be the TriStar, the L-1011.
I would love to fly on the TriStar. Is it TriStar?
I don't think.
No?
I think
They
they're gone.
that?
Yeah.
That's
sorry. Did you say Death Star?
Plane.
I didn't quite.
Yeah, the Death Star. Very, it's a little bulky. It's kind of hard to maneuver, but
Circular, yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, so those are the questions from Sylvie. He says, I promise I will record a future date some feedback about what got me into aviation. Yeah, do that, Sylvie. We'd like to hear from you. On the last note, I was going through another podcast, Skeptoid. I stumbled upon an episode about MH370 that the crew and community might be interested in. So here's the link. And so we'll put that link in the show notes so you can read about chasing Malaysian Airlines MH370. A roundup of the conspiracy theories and the probable true fate of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 by Brian Dunning. So there we go. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you, Sylvia, for
I thought that was a well-written article, but I thought his concept that the probable true fate was that it ended up on the moon was just a little bit, I didn't quite.
I mean, that's the most likely, I think. Come on.
No, I'm doing Mr. Dunning down. Did you like that alliteration?
Yes.
No, it's actually a very well written article, and it does sum up all the wacky theories, and then comes up with the logical thought that we all have: is that it's very sadly lying at the bottom of the Indian Ocean.
Yep, it's just a matter of time before they find some of the big pieces, I think.
Yeah, and we just on that Times newspaper had an interesting article about it just a couple of days ago, where they apparently reviewed some of the photographs that their photographers had taken from the initial search airplanes, and they discovered on those photographs, because they took a whole bunch of them, what might have been some wreckage. And they know what position that was. And so they're saying that if this turns out to be wreckage, then we've got a much better idea of where it actually hit the ground, because this was very shortly after its impact. And that may, in fact, lead. It was just a bit to the north of the expected flight path, but well within the area of probability. But whether it turns out to be wreckage or not, a bit hard to say. It was just big square lumps of something in the water. Unfortunately, there's so much stuff floating around in the oceans. It might be anything, but you never know. It might turn out to be actually a good clue.
Yeah, I hope they find it. Especially for the sake of the families.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris from U42, I think he sent us in some feedback last episode, somewhere in the Salt Lake City area, right?
Yep. Oh gosh, where is? I always forget which town it's
like
actually.
Something West Jordan, I think he
said.
Or
West Jordan. I'm sorry, it's in West Jordan. I should really know. I'm so sorry. I know exactly where the airport is, but.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he says, thought this might be of interest to the airline pilots. And he said, thank you for all the wonderful job you do, and lots of love and gratitude from the Wasatch Mountains. And this is an article entitled NASA Harvests Slow-Moving Air to Increase Next-Gen Aircraft Efficiency. And we'll put a link to this article in the show notes so you can read it as well. I think there was also some video that showed this new concept that they're working with, and basically they're taking some of the laminar flow from the fuselage and in the area of the tail. They're like capturing this airflow and then enhancing it with an electric motor, which is powered by generators on two very small wing-mounted engines. And so apparently the bulk of the thrust is coming from this engine mounted directly on the tail. And again, as I said, it's an electric motor, so they're using some interesting technologies to try to get some good thrust and try to cut down on emissions and that kind of thing. So
yeah, I love this idea, because this is the point where the fuselage starts to narrow again, where the air that's streaming down the fuselage will start to break away, and every time it breaks away and becomes turbulent, it's going to create significantly more drag than it did when it was just streaming down the side of the fuselage. And by creating a nice low pressure at the intake of this tail mounted electric fan, they're going to draw that air in, and it will not break away into turbulence. In theory, I guess it'll remain attached and then go into this fan, and then they'll boost it out the back, which is a great concept. If they could think of the same way to do it across the wings, and perhaps on the wing tips, and utilize that area where we would normally get a lot of breakaway and those great big wingtip vortices that are generated there get a lot of drag, then that would be another fascinating concept. But NASA are looking at some great ideas. I can't believe that it's taken so long to dream up this idea. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're not doing anything with space or anything, so I guess they have time to.
They can redirect their efforts elsewhere. I mean, it's a practical application of things, so something we use every day.
Good point. Good point. 20% of power on takeoff and 45% of cruising power, and an efficiency of increased by 10%. Airlines will pay for that, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And they call this concept the BLI, Boundary Layer Ingesting Engine. So very, very cool.
Yeah.
Good to see some innovations out there. Don, our good friend, the pre-buy guy, sent us a link to YouTube, a bunch of nice footage of Mad Dogs from Delta Airlines landing and taking off at Washington, D.C., Washington National. Kind of cool to watch.
The more I see of that airplane, the more beautiful it gets to look. It's just that long, slim nose and those lovely setback wings. It's a super looking video, isn't it? It looks great. They a few dodgy looking approaches with the wind. I mean, looked hard.
Yeah.
Not the pilots weren't flying them well. They were, but it didn't look a particularly easy day. Some of those were taken on.
Yeah, well, that's the appearance anyway, or maybe they were just inferior pilots. Now at Acme, we have all the good Acme, the Mad Dog drivers at our company.
It was not actual footage of Jeff and/or Matt landing there.
No, because if it was one coming in, it was just rock solid and it was just rolled on. That would have been my footage and Matt's footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compensating errors.
Liz always sends us a lot of good stuff, and this was really interesting. It was an article written by Robert Graves and with a foreword by Sully Sullenberger talking about airplanes and automation, and the title was "Will Computers Learn to Fly Well Enough Before Pilots Forget How?" And so, you all know how I feel about this, that we need to continue to exercise our flying skills, because if we don't, we're going to lose them. And this gentleman feels the same way. And I just want to read at least one of these paragraphs that really hit home for me and expressed how I feel about these things. He says, "Over the years, I've flown with some truly amazing pilots who could fly the machine like a virtuoso might play a finely tuned instrument. I've also flown with some, how shall we say, less precise pilots who, while meeting standards, didn't go out of their way to make my or anyone else's eyes water at the sight of their aerial proficiency. This has usually been a case of lacking not skill, but rather the motivation for excellence. And I get it. It's nearly impossible to be always on, but over time, an average level of effort will be apparent." And that is just sums up the way I feel about some of the people that I fly with, that they just seem to be flying the old family station wagon, the family sedan. They don't really care how they're doing it. They're not trying to impress anybody, apparently. And as I mentioned to Matt, I mean, I think that what we do as airline pilots is a craft. And I think we should all be doing the very, very best job that we can. And I go out of plane as smoothly as I can so the people in the back hardly can tell when we're climbing and descending and turning. But I'm not sure I understand why so many people that I fly with nowadays just don't seem to care about that. It's just a job, and they let the automation do its thing, and it's not always the smoothest course of action, and I don't know, it's just like they don't have any pride in their craft.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. We talked yesterday, Jeff, at length about this article after you shared it with me, and I think it's even more apparent on the airplane that we fly, just because the Mad Dog requires so much finesse to be smooth anyway, most certainly, that you do notice when somebody is moving it from A to B, and just pushing the buttons and moving the levers required to do so. It can be very uncomfortable at times if the airplane is allowed to do automation, which is crude at best, is allowed to do what it does. So it does take, I like the words, the phrase that he chose in this article, a motivation for excellence. It does take that desire to go beyond the trained proficiency that we all have to make it smooth and be a better pilot than just moving the plane from gate to gate, and make it a comfortable experience for the passengers. That's I think a good aspect of when you talk about the professionalism of airline pilots.
Right.
One of the most important aspects of it.
And it goes beyond, as we mentioned in our conversation, it goes beyond just flying the airplane. It's how you appear in your uniform. And what care you take in making sure that the shirt that you're flying at some point was ironed. I mean, I was saying to Matt that I've seen some guys lately, not so much when I was first hired, but lately, are dressed in a uniform that looks like they've been wearing for 2 weeks, and they're just starting a trip. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? That I'm not sure I understand this attitude at all. Now he does make some good points. I mean, several good points in this article. Robert does. For instance, this one: in today's highly automated aviation environment, it's becoming more difficult to tell who can fly the airplane well or not, because we rarely do it. And when I use the term fly here, I mean to hand fly the aircraft without the use of the autopilot or automation. Hand flying, like any precise or complex human task, is a perishable skill. If you don't practice for a while, you'll get rusty. Any musician knows this. So anyway, he says also that part of the problem is that many airline standard operating procedures are that you basically are required to fly the airplane with all the automation to the maximum extent possible. So that's kind of a counterintuitive thing. If you're being told that you have to fly the airplane with the automation, but you should still hand fly occasionally to keep up your skills, it's kind of like a mixed message.
It is.
Yeah. What do you think, Nick?
We used to have that policy, but the guys that ran the airline when we were doing that, in other words, we were said, leave the automatics in as much as possible, have long gone. And the word out on the street now is fly the airplane as much as you want to. And when you do, feel free to take out both the auto throttle and the auto pilot so that you can fully manually fly the airplane. And, so long as it's appropriate, so long as you're both feeling reasonably fit and you haven't done too long a drag through the night, then it's ideal. I think it's great. The automation is there to assist us, not to rule us. And I'm a great believer in when you fancy it, fly it yourself. I think a great measure of the confidence of a pilot is when he's happy to take the automatics out. And some do it at minimums, which on a nice day when you've just done a quick trip home from wherever, day flight, I think is foolish. Some never take the autopilot out until the guy ahead has cleared the runway, just in case they have to do a go-around because they know the autopilot will fly the go-around for them. If they take the autopilot out, they're going to have to manually fly the initial part of the go-around until they can stab that button again and breathe a sigh of relief. So, yeah, I'm with you. There are great pilots out there who fly the airplane better than I can. There are some guys out there who just lack the confidence to do it.
And you make a good point. The kind of flying that you do, Nick, is the long haul stuff, and that's a different world. And I completely understand after a super long flight and the fatigue involved and everything else that probably the safest thing when you're carrying all these passengers is to just use the automation to the greatest extent possible. So I know it's a different world that you're flying in. The world that Matt and I are flying in, however, we have a lot of opportunities to practice our flying skills. Go ahead, Steph.
Oh, I had 2 points. One, the first was, this is a topic that we've talked about a lot, just about professionalism and about, any job that's worth doing is worth doing well. And if it's your job to do it, you really should be, trying to polish those skills and do it to the best of your abilities. The other point I was thinking about while you guys were talking was, for me, I really didn't have a whole lot of experience with some of this automation until recently when I had more of a chance to fly the Cirrus SR-22. And it's really the only GA aircraft I've flown that has a really good working autopilot that will actually do all of these things. But, it's funny how fast you can get used to that and how fast, especially for single pilot operations, where it really is a big help if you're trying to fly in instrument conditions or shoot approaches, is just so nice to reduce some of that workload. But at the same time, it really is that double-edged sword where you can become very reliant on it very quickly and not practice those hand flying skills if you're not careful. So I can see where it happens. I can see where people become less and less proficient over time. And, like you said, maybe not because they intended to, but just because that's how they're running the operation and just following standard procedures. So
it's a vicious cycle too. I think that the more you use the automation and let the autopilot fly the airplane, the more rusty you get yourself, and then you're flying with somebody and you want to impress them. You know what you're doing. You're all that, and if you haven't really hand flown the airplane in a while, you're not going to want to show the person that you're flying with that you really aren't all that. Right.
My desire to hand fly comes more from wanting to prove to myself that I can still do it, rather than the guy I'm flying with, or maybe both. I want to prove.
Well,
I think that's probably the
you're
right.
a more whole person.
That's the right motivation there, and that's what it should be.
Well, that's what it takes. Yeah,
that's coming from a mature adult right there.
But I mean, that's where that's what separates the people who clearly look like they put time and effort into what they're doing, and those who don't, because it's that internal motivation, it's that internal drive to do well at your job. So
I think the ones that really do a good job of that, flying airplanes, are probably doing that in every aspect of their life, and it's not just this that happens to be their job, their field of endeavor. It's everything they strive for is trying to do the best they can, and I would bet at the same time, those who don't seem to really strive for excellence flying airplanes probably don't strive for excellence in much anything else in their lives.
Using an iron, before they come to work.
Or you can just take them to the dry cleaners. They do a pretty good job of pressing.
But
shirts
you
and
gotta collect the shirts. You gotta get in the car. You gotta drive down the street. You gotta wait a couple days and then go pick it up. It's just
true.
You're asking a lot.
What about these hats, though, Jeff? I mean, you can't iron a hat. You just have to buy a new one. Yet, I see some hats that look like they've been used as a seat cushion for a number of years.
I love, and a lot of guys complain about the hats, but you know what? Honestly, Acme is one of those airlines where that's part of our uniform. It's not an option, although some people apparently think it is. And I think it really makes us stand out, and I love it myself. It's not like I wear hats when I'm not at work. I don't. But when I'm going to work and I'm wearing my uniform, I think wearing the hat is really I think it's a sharp thing, and it really does set us apart from all the other carriers out there. Yes. Or not all of them, but many of them.
Integral part of our uniform, certainly.
And it,
it gives you that. Otherwise, you're just a bloke in a funny suit.
Yeah.
Some stripes on your sleeves.
Well, I already am that, but, bloke in a funny, wearing a hat. All right. Anyway, link to this in the show notes. Thanks again, Liz. Really enjoyed this article. Very well written. And I think that you out there will enjoy reading it as well.
Liz has to be one of our best producers, the amount of good stuff she sends in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And not only that, but she's also a financial supporter, producer, which is kind of a definition of a producer, right? Supporting financially. And thank you again, Liz, for that nice contribution to our episode 300 celebration and party. We're really sad you weren't able to join us. It would have been a blast if you had. But thank you again for your very generous contributions to our Okay. Hey, Rob. So I thought his feedback was good because I think we pilots take for granted, some of the terms we use about, what controllers do for us and that kind of thing. And so let me read what he said. Feedback. Hi, you may have addressed this in a podcast long ago. Recently, you all talked about general procedures for controllers guiding you for approaching the field for landing. But the approach to Reagan National from the west involves many twists and turns while following the Potomac River. How does this work for that airport? And it seems like it would be fun. I really enjoy your podcast, Rob. Rob, it is. It is a lot of fun. I mean, I guess there are probably some that don't enjoy doing the river visual into DCA, but I think 99% of us really have a blast with it.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be intimidating, especially when you haven't done it very many times. But if you've been doing this thing for basically 29 years of your flying career, it's just it's so much fun. But just to get to your question here, so controllers, what they do is they basically control you or guide you to a certain point, and then basically whether you're using an instrument landing system approach or a RNAV approach procedure, once you intercept like a straight-in approach, you're on your own. They don't control you after that. They're not telling you, oh, you need to turn left a little bit, you need to turn right a little bit, unless you're doing something that they call a, the ASR approach, the approach surveillance radar. I think that's what the ASR stands for, or a precision approach radar approach, where they actually literally tell you turn left, turn right, and descend, etc. But those kind of approaches aren't very common anymore. The common approaches that we do are the straight-in approaches using RNAV or ILS navigation instruments to guide us to the airport. So the controller really doesn't do that. They just kind of get you to that starting point, and then they basically say you're cleared for the ILS approach or the visual approach if you can see the airport. Now, Reagan National, the river visual that you talk about here is one of those approaches that are completely visual approach. So you are using your eyeballs to look at that river, and you are actually following the river as it snakes down toward the mall and all the monuments and everything else. And that's, you're using. I mean, there are some things that you can use for guidance, but it's not like the controller is telling you, okay, now you need to turn a little bit over there. No, you need to turn left. You need to, they're not controlling you.
I was going to say, if you look at what the the FAA has published on the charts or whatnot, there are actually published information for the river visual. I don't know if you can see what I'm holding up to the camera there, but it doesn't give a whole lot of guidance other than this is actually what it says. Aircraft may visually follow the river to the airport or may proceed via the RNAV runway 19 approach to, is that CTOC waypoint, then follow the river to the airport. You have to have weather minimums of 3,500 foot ceiling, 3 mile visibility. And then it actually, as you're following the river, does give, altitude guidance at different waypoints. And most of them are bridges. So it names the different bridges, and it gives you a little bit more situational awareness too by showing you, your DME distance from the VOR there. So.
And basically what I do is it's very simple. I just use the distance measuring equipment, the DME readout, and I just multiply that by 3, and that gives me an idea of where my 3-to-1 line is. And so at 3 miles, I should be at 900 feet.
Exactly. And that is at the Key Bridge.
Yeah.
Just in case you were.
And so it's just using basic fundamentals. Go ahead.
It's right there at the 3 DME arc is Key Bridge, and it says 900 feet. So
there you go.
You're spot on. Yeah. Math.
And then you're making that final turn. It's below 500, isn't it? You're about making that final turn to line up with.
So all the things that we learned about stabilized approaches basically fly out the window.
But that's what makes it fun, right?
According to architecture.
It does.
No, that's why it's so thrilling.
And that my first time, and I think I've mentioned this probably a few times on the show, but I have such a fond memory of it. The first time that I did the approach, I was a first officer on the 727, and we were coming in. You take for granted how you are normally making that final turn to line up with the runway quite a ways out, at least 4 or 5 miles out. At Reagan, you're, I don't know, maybe a mile out, if that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even think it's that far. I mean, just
probably not.
Here,
it's like very
half
close.
A mile, maybe.
And so your brain is trying to make all these calculations. Okay, I should probably start banking to line up with the runway here. And of course, what I did, and of course, it was exacerbated by an overshooting wind. Wind, blowing me away from the turn in the direction of the runway, and I started to turn, and I realized almost immediately, oh, this is not going to work, and we're getting really close to this runway, and I'm not aligned with it, and so I think I banked up the airplane maybe 40 degrees or maybe a little bit more.
Nice.
And I was able to land it, and I still remember the American Airlines jet on the waiting for departure on that same runway said something like on the radio, "Good show, Delta." And I kind of looked over at the captain like, was that a compliment or not? And he goes, I don't know.
We're not going to talk about it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about it over some beers.
That's right.
But it was a blast. And it still is a blast. I still really enjoy that approach.
Now, you guys don't have this data monitoring that we have in the Airbus on your Mad Dogs, do you?
Well, we do. We the 88 does have that FOQA stuff, and apparently they probably go, oh, okay, this is DCA. Just throw all that out.
Yeah, it must trigger it every time, I'm sure.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure it does.
Oh, it's DCA.
Because we've looked at the graphs where it shows the approaches that are in red are the ones that are not stabilized based on their criteria for stabilized approaches. And I always say a lot of times when I'm doing a visual approach, I said, I think I'm right now one of those red lines. But,
love it.
But it's perfectly fine. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I would always be that green line stabilized all the way down.
Where else do we do some of those visuals? There's the expressway visual in LaGuardia.
Yeah.
There's the you've done the harbor visual into Portland, Maine.
Yeah.
There's a very pretty one. Not quite as much aerial acrobatics, but the expressway visual is.
Yeah, the expressway visual is a lot of fun too. Yeah. That's actually all three of those are some of my favorite approaches.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rob, for the question. I think did that kind of clarify to Rob, the fact that the controllers really aren't controlling us all the way down to the runway as far as giving us guidance?
Yeah, I think he was wondering how the controllers were giving you all those different turns along the way, and the answer is they're not, because
They're not.
it's visual and you have to be able to see and follow the river. So
Right.
that's how that works.
Awesome. Hey, Jay writes, he sent us some feedback in episode 299. He says, hello, Captain Jeff, Barbecue Master Dana, the good Dr. Steph, and my fellow countryman, Captain Nick. First, I just wanted to join the endless line of well-wishers and my congratulations, such as they are, on your 300th show, which is an admirable achievement and shouldn't be sniffed at. Sorry if any of my English colloquialisms, there we go, are confusing, asked Nick. I got all those. The party looked like a blast, and it was good to hear how important your podcast is to so many people around the world, myself included. Thank you for reading out my feedback in episode 299. Apologies for not being as clear on my own situation as I intended, and please allow me to clarify. I mentioned I'm hoping to one day obtain an ATPL, have recently made the decision to dedicate my time and resources to that aim. I currently hold a PPL, which I originally was certified for in South Africa in 2008, and now I'm studying for my instrument rating, multi-engine rating, and commercial here in Australia. As I mentioned before, once I had made the decision to go down this path, what had been decided, but the where, how, when, etc. still needed to be explored. Dana made a good point about doing flight training in the country that you want to be in, want to one day be employed, but actually in my case, this wasn't a top priority. I'll explain why shortly. I think my situation is one that is probably very common for a lot of people who have made the switch to aviation later in life. In attempting to work out how best I should proceed, I tried to take a logical approach to analyzing global flight training options, considering multiple factors, considerations, limitations, predicted outcomes. Such considerations included the financial requirements of training, the geolocation, the time requirements, employment opportunities, living standards, and general safety, the quality of training, and the ease of license transferal to other authorities. The geolocation issue was not a big factor for me, as I felt pretty comfortable living pretty much anywhere in the world. I have lived and worked in the UK, France, Canada, the US, South Africa, and Australia, to name a few, and have had no problems anywhere. My basic thought was, if I obtain a frozen ATPL in an ICAO-approved country, I'd literally be happy to work anywhere in the world. If being back home is more important to me, I'll worry about down the line. Expectation affected the other variables such as cost, time requirements, etc. The financial requirements commonly cited as a limiting factor, and for me, I looked at not only how much flight school would cost, but also how easy it would be to earn and work in the local currency. In the end, I came up with a simple formula that worked on a points index. Just for one example, I looked at things such as the ratio between average salary, flight training per hour, and then awarded points to places where the ratio was favorable. After every data set I could think of that would be relevant, including those mentioned above, average entry-level pilot salary, mean pilot salary by country, average furlough rates, etc., I came up with what I considered to be the most balanced appraisal that I could hope to achieve. The best option for me as a 31-year-old graduate with a private pilot license, low hours, good earning potential, and flexible training requirements was Australia. For many other people, the answer would be different, depending on their own circumstances. But I have to admit that Australia had not even been on my radar as a possibility before starting that process. I hope this all makes sense. I've probably bored everyone to tears here, so let me just finish off with a question. Acme has the reputation for being the best airline in the U.S., but many of the other U.S. carriers have a less than glowing, as many of the other U.S. carriers have a less than glowing reputation. According to Skytrax, no U.S. airline has achieved more than 3 stars, Virgin America being the exception. But the average customer rating is less than 30% approval. As pilots, is the reputation of your airline important? Does it have any bearing at all whether or not you wish to work for them? I'm curious to know if the pilots for Ryanair feel the same way about their jobs and airline as those working for Emirates or Singapore. What are your thoughts about the U.S. industry in general? Okay, so for going on. Oh, okay. So for going on for too long, many thanks. Tailwinds, unlimited visibility. You know, I think he meant to say sorry, but that's okay. You don't need to say sorry, Jay. I mean, wow. First of all, this guy is a very analytical guy. Could easily be a statistician or an accountant or math major or something, based on all the the very elaborate process of coming up with what would be the best place to learn how to fly and such. And I think that I'm glad that you sent all that in. And no, you didn't bore us to tears. I mean, I think that you brought up a lot of salient points as far as what you should consider. And then I think the bottom line, though, is kind of nested in the last portion of your feedback, which is like, does it matter the reputation of your airline, or what does matter? And I don't think that you can say as a generality what is most important for an individual pilot. I think it varies. I mean, I think that a lot of pilots out there, and maybe you would agree or not, Matt, that they say, I'm going to try to get a job with United because I live in Chicago and I don't want to commute, and that's a very reasonable thing, not to to be based somewhere where you don't feel like you got to have to commute to work every flight, etc. And you may not be concerned about the reputation of the airline. And the other thing you have to consider is that this airline that you want to fly for 20 years ago may have had a fantastic reputation, and lately it's not so great. So that changes over time as well. I don't know. What do you think?
Having come from the regionals, we, in an effort to recruit and figure out why, it's obvious why pilots in this country, in the U.S. anyway, decide to go to the majors. The majors are where the pay and benefits are. They have the history. They fly the big planes and all that stuff. But at the regional level, it's far different, of course. So we try to figure out, in an effort to recruit pilots to our airline, for example, why are pilots choosing to go to certain regionals? There's so many of them. Does it have to do just with bonuses and stuff like that, or do things like what kind of reputation does this airline have weigh in on their decision? Because certainly in the regional industry, there are some regional airlines that have far worse reputations historically than some of the others. And what we found was just like you're implying. It's far more practical reasons that pilots choose to go where they go. It had little to do with their reputation. It had largely to do with where they wanted to be. Certainly in this country, because of its size, quality of life is largely affected by where you live in relation to where you're going to be based. That was a top factor in where you choose. Certainly money, bonuses, stuff like that weighed into it, but career progression was up there too. So it depends on what level. Like you're saying, at the regional level, I don't think the reputation of the airline had much to do with why people decided to go one place or the other. Major level, maybe it does, but again, I would be tempted to say, like you're implying, it's more practical reasons that people decide to go where they go.
Interestingly, back in the 80s, when I was looking at various airlines, and I'd chosen one, Acme, the one for which I'm flying, which I'm very blessed for. But the reason why many people chose Acme Airlines back in the 80s was that it was the only airline that had never furloughed a pilot ever in its history. Now, we all know, never say never, because chances are it may happen someday. And guess what? It did a few times. Acme's had to furlough pilots. And so that's just an example of, just because an airline has a certain track record or reputation for something doesn't guarantee that it's not going to change as time goes on.
You look at the present day, make the best decision you get in the present day.
Exactly.
And not worry about it, because 180 degrees different, certainly in just the decade that I've been in the industry.
Right.
How things have turned out, no question.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I personally get a great kick out of working for an airline with a good reputation. There's no doubt about it that we're not a big airline. We're certainly not a big competition for a lot of other airlines that fly the same routes, but we do have a little sort of niche, a little kind of boutique feel to us, because we do things just a little bit different in Acme Red. And I think that feeling of a bit of fun that runs through the entire airline it was a great factor. For me, joining, I had a choice of a number of airlines to go to, some of which had exactly the same base and things, so that didn't make any difference. I could have joined an airline that was already 35 years in existence, and it would have gone bust on me 6 months ago, or not even that long ago. As it was, I joined an airline that was only 10 years old and only had 10 airplanes. And it's probably the best decision I made. And the reason I made that decision almost certainly was because the guy who introduced me to the airline was a very senior flight engineer, and he just enthused about the atmosphere and the working environment and the fun I was going to have in this airline. And really, that's what drew me to it. You know, it was like a personal recommendation. And I mean, obviously had our ups and downs, but I haven't looked back since. I've thoroughly enjoyed being with Acme Red. They're absolutely brilliant airline.
The whole Acme family is just awesome.
It sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I love, go ahead.
Nick actually just said what I was going to add to this whole thing, because certainly it's not my profession, but I've been around a lot of folks who have been, especially getting into their beginning careers, regional careers, and what they've been looking for and what I've heard from them. Certainly the things that Matt mentioned, they're looking for pay and location, but they're also looking for, they're talking to folks who are in those airlines currently, and they want to know who's happy where they're at and who has a good quality of life and who's being treated well. And that makes a big difference as well. So
it really does. When I interviewed with several other carriers, it's funny how immediately you get a kind of a feel for the operation and their attitudes about certain things. And one of the first interviews that I went to was U.S. Air, and I was not impressed at all. I was like, I hope that I don't have to choose this one, or this is the only one that offers me employment, and it happened to be like one of the top airlines of choice for the guys in the 80s in my peer group, because they had the reputation for being upgraded to captain within a very short period of time. And when I say short period of time, not compared to what you're hearing these days, for instance, at our carrier, but like within 5 years, which is unheard of. And, back in the Eastern United, TWA, Pan Am, Delta, American, et cetera, carriers, just like what, get upgraded to captain within 5 years. But then you had to look at the fact that they had it was a narrow body only fleet. They only had like a handful of wide body jets, and the kind of flying that you're going to do, all choices, and a long run and all that kind of stuff. And so, initially you might be making really good money really, really quickly, but then you're going to basically hit your peak very early on in your career, and that's going to be it. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out, that I really just didn't feel like the place for me when I went there for the interview. And then going to American Airlines and their facility, very impressive, very professional. Same thing with Northwest Airlines. Very, very impressed with their whole training facility and their interview process and everything else. But Acme was the one that's where my heart was. Not because they had never furloughed anybody. It's just because I thought that Acme was just the best carrier out there in my mind, and I was so happy to get hired by them. So anyway, well, thank you very, very much, Jay, for your clarification. And I'm sure that they helped a lot of people, and look forward to hearing more about your journey. And now, what we've all been waiting for, the pinnacle, the best part of the show, which of course is not only your feedback, but Plane Tales, this week's installment. Take it away, Captain Nick.
The Old Pilot's Plane Tales. Coca Able Peter Tokyo, Nan Item Canada King.
As the apocryphal tale goes, there was a major at the front who, on surveying the enemy forces,
did they just disappear?
Well, that was a short-played tale. God damn it.
It really was.
Yeah, it's shortest
I like
one
what you
I've
do with
done.
the initials there, by the way. That's just
Have you managed to spell it out yet?
Oh yeah, just from the very beginning too. I was like, very clever. Yes.
Well, I'm assuming they'll be back. I wonder
hope
which
so.
button Jeff pressed in error.
Probably the one that says hang up.
Yes.
You know when you go to hit like mute and it's like, whoops, that was not
Yeah,
what
he
I
probably
wanted.
did something. I mean, he was using his phone, wouldn't he? He probably turned his phone off or something. I hope he gets back soon, because otherwise he won't be able to get back into the Hangout.
I know, that would be not good. I'm sure he'll text us here in a moment. Maybe we should text him to make sure he knows he disappeared. I'm sure he does, but
Oh, he's probably jawing with
Hello?
Matt.
I'll send him a text. All right.
Well, what should we talk about, Steph?
Oh, I don't know. I was just laughing at Neville. He's like, apparently he was getting ready to go to bed, but now he's noticed that there's been a technical moment here. He's going to hang around and see what happens.
Bit of
Neville,
Sheldon
we need your assistance. Well,
Never terrible.
Nick and I don't need your assistance. So it's
No.
No.
Well, I'll tell you what I've been doing the last few days. I've got this lecture I've got to give. I'm going to give to two organizations now. First of all, one of the guys I met at Goodwood, his model flying club have an AGM, and there's about 50 members. They're all av geeks, and they wanted to talk. And then in January, I'm off to the Royal Aeronautical Society to give a talk. So I needed to go back through my photo albums and digitize. That's good
that's
word. I like that word. All the pictures I wanted to use for these lectures. So I've got all my camera gear set up. I've got lights so I don't get any reflections off the photographs. I've got big tripods, all that set up, tied to my computer. Hello, what's he say?
He said, is it still broadcasting? It says,
no.
Well, Nick and I are, yeah.
Yeah, we are, yes. So I've been doing that. I've been on my hands and knees photographing dozens of pictures. So
nice.
That's why my muscles are all.
You don't have a scanner to scan the photos in, or just not as good quality?
I have to try and lever them out of the albums. In those days, I used to use those sticky back albums with and they were supposed to be removable, and but
after so many years.
Exactly right. So I can't. So I just lay the album out and I photograph it. And quite honestly, it's just as good as doing a scan, because probably just as good definition anyway.
Yeah. Might even be better. Some of those scanners aren't real.
No, exactly right. But it's just a long process. But I've been tying it into my laptop, trying to is it still on air? Yeah, it's still showing live.
Appears to be.
Yeah. So and I can shoot through the laptop, and the laptop's brilliant because I can sit back and focus and reframe and do whatever I need to, and work the camera remotely, which is just a great piece of kit. So that's been occupying me.
Nice. That sounds much more exciting than what I've been doing, which is just work, work.
Oh,
hello.
Okay.
No, it's all right.
Glenn says hi to Tim Robinson. Okay. Is he just one of the members, or is he one of the organizers? Glenn.
Thanks for keeping everybody going
here he
there.
is. He's back again.
Which
button did he press this time?
Well, this happened before we started recording using the virtual mixer program that I use, Audio Hijack.
Mm-hmm.
I changed something in it earlier, and then it kind of crashed everything. And I thought, well, that's odd. Never seen that before. And then, of course, it did the same thing when I was muting our mics. It just decided to crash.
Oh,
gotcha.
So let me just make sure that we have everything back to where it should be, and then I'll restart Plaintails, and then we'll just pretend like nothing bad happened.
Nothing bad did.
I don't know what you're even talking about.
Yeah,
I don't know. Who are these people? What am I talking about?
Where am
I? So crossed fingers.
Okay.
Go back.
Good luck.
Thanks. Just a little speed bump there, right?
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. Coca Able Peter Tokyo. Nan Item Canada King.
As the apocryphal tale goes, there was a major at the front,
who, on surveying the enemy forces ahead of him, saw a perfect chance to attack. However, his small force wasn't sufficient to grasp the opportunity. Hastily, he told his sergeant to get a message to the general. "Send reinforcements, we're going to advance." The lines of communication to the general, sitting happily in a villa some distance back, were somewhat complicated. The sergeant ran to the telephone operator and told him what to say. Getting quickly onto the blower, the telephone man contacted the radio station and shouted the message down the crackly line. The radio man smartly fired up his set and, tuning it in, passed the message on. Next, it was given to a runner, who in turn told it to a motorcycle dispatch rider. Ploughing through craters and potholes, the dispatch rider drove up to the villa. He was far too dirty to be allowed into the presence of the general, so the officer of the day was called. He listened to the message and strode to the general's aide-de-camp. Having been given the message and looking a little puzzled, the aide-de-camp climbed the stairs and knocked politely on the door of the general's dining room. On being called in, he sidled up beside the general, who was enjoying a nicely hung pheasant, and spoke into his ear. "Sorry to disturb you, sir," he muttered obsequiously. "A message from the front. The major requests, send 3 and 4pence. We're going to a dance." And so it was that the phonetic alphabet was created. Well, not quite, but back before the First World War, when communications weren't quite up to the high fidelity quality that we're used to, there was a real need for a telephonic spelling alphabet. It wasn't as if there suddenly appeared a single alphabetic code that everyone used, because various different ones popped up all around the world. Even by the Second World War, many nations still used their own different version. The US used the Joint Army-Navy radiotelephony alphabet. This became known as the Able-Baker, after the first 2 letters, and a similar one was also in common use with the Royal Air Force. This one was similar to the Royal Navy phonetic alphabet created in the First World War. A couple of the words are still in common use amongst civilians: F for Freddy and S for sugar. As World War II progressed, America, Australia, and Britain had their versions standardized by the Combined Communications Board into the Charlie Charlie Baker Peter 1, the Combined Communications Board Procedure Number 1. At least we were now all calling a love easy tear tear easy Roger all the same thing, but greater minds were on the job at Harvard University's Psychoacoustic Laboratory. Here they examined all the various alphabets from the USA, Royal Air Force, Royal Navy, British Army, AT&T, Western Union, RCA Communications, and that of the International Telecommunications Convention. According to a report on the subject, the results showed that many of the words in the military lists had a low level of intelligibility, but that most of the deficiencies could be remedied by the judicious selection of words from the commercial codes and those tested by the laboratory. In a few instances where none of the 250 words could be regarded as especially satisfactory, it was believed possible to discover suitable replacements. Other words were tested, and the most intelligible ones were compared with the most desirable lists. A final NDRC list was assembled and recommended to the CCB. Some letters were obviously difficult, and some were really messed about with. Let's have a look at N, which in 1920 started off as Nancy under the Universal Electrical Communications Union, Washington, D.C. Code, but became Neufchâtel at the International Radio Telegraph Convention, Washington, D.C., 1927. Not satisfied with that, in 1932, the Madrid General Radio Communications and Additional Regulations changed it to New York, which survived the 1938 Cairo International Radio Communication Conference code words and the 1947 Atlantic City International Radio Conference. However, N for New York became complacent, and at the 1946 ICAO second session of the Communications Division, the same as the Joint Army-Navy version, N was changed to NAN, and later Nickel. Nickel had a short life, and next year it was changed into Nancy, and then later in the same year to Norma. Norma managed to keep going for a couple of years until Nectar came along. As sweet as N for Nectar was, although it survived the 1951 ICAO code words changes, it became a chilly November in 1956. November turned out to be a long month, as it lasted to today, some 61 years later. Some letters have had pretty exotic code words. C was Casablanca. Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine. Some seem destined to dash around the world, from Baltimore to Brazil, Hanover to Havana, Madrid to Madagascar, Sardinia to Santiago, Zanzibar to Zululand to Zurich. So we ended up with the 19 Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta Echo Foxtrot Golf Hotel India Juliet Kilo Lima Mike November Oscar Papa Quebec Romeo Sierra Tango Uniform Victor Whiskey X-Ray Yankee Zulu. The reason for all the changes were defined by the requirements laid out in ICAO in 1948. There must be a live word in each of the 3 working languages, be easily pronounced and recognized by airmen of all languages, have good radio transmission and readability characteristics, have a similar spelling in at least English, French, and Spanish, and the initial letter must be the letter the word identifies, be free from any associations with objectionable meanings. As more countries joined into the international world of aviation, it became obvious that some words were easily misidentified, particularly with the enormous variety of accents. Testing was conducted among speakers from 31 nations, principally by the governments of the United Kingdom and the United States, and the results gave rise to the list of words we currently use. Not only was the word chosen, its spelling, pronunciation, and syllable emphasis was defined. For example, hotel isn't hotel, it's hotel. Generally speaking, or perhaps more correctly, phonetically speaking, the emphasis is on the first syllable, except for November and Sierra, the middle, Papa, and Quebec at the end. Of course, numbers also had to be given the treatment, but they tend to be fairly distinct. However, 1 should be spoken as if spelt W-U-N. 3 is tree, 4 becomes fowa, 5 is fife, 7 is seven, and 9 grows to niner. Whilst the world of aviation and the military were getting themselves standardized, there were, of course, major communication companies that insisted on having their own. Western Union had one in 1912, and AT&T developed their own in 1917. These had strange words like X for Xanthippe, the wife of Socrates, and U for Uppsala, a city in Sweden. Whilst we are all supposed to be able to speak the phonetic alphabet, regardless of where we grew up, I still miss some of the more exotic words of old. Who wouldn't want to say Ursula, Coco, Eddystone, Francisco, Dado, Hombre, Tripoli, Valencia, Yolanda, and Exquis, or count with Penta, Saxo, Sette, Octo, and Nonna, all used in the past. As much as those might make you smile, the radio operators of the Second World War came up with their own humorous version, which started as A for horses, B for mutton, C for yourself, and continued with such gems as L for leather, N for lope, O for the wings of a dove, P for relief, T for two, V for España, and wife for mistress. In a similar vein, there are many brevity code words that came into use, probably just to formalize what was common slang amongst pilots. These are now formally defined in a NATO publication, but I can see that some have lasted almost from the earliest days. Famous is angels, a term meaning altitude in thousands of feet. For example, Angels 5 is 5,000 feet. A bogey is an unidentified aircraft and always gives rise to a giggle when someone calls a bogey on your nose, whilst a bandit is an identified enemy aircraft. The US multi-service brevity codes even includes tally for the sighting of a target from the old British list, which included the longer version, tally-ho. Tally-ho is a hunting term which dates back to around 1772 and is derived from the far more ancient phrase tally-hot, a war cry which literally means swords up. Sounds nasty. This is, boringly, not an official FAA-endorsed phrase to be found in the pilot controller glossary, as the civvy world prefers traffic in sight. Others might amuse. Blow-through doesn't give warning of Captain Al's likely behavior after a curry, but indicates that an aircraft will continue straight through a merge and not turn with the target, something I was sadly all too familiar with during my days flying the Tornado F3. Feet wet or feet dry is to cross the coast, while posit asks for your position from a landmark. The Fox calls vary depending on what weapon is used. Fox 1 is a semi-active radar-guided missile, Fox 2 an infrared-guided missile, and Fox 3 an active radar-guided missile, although in my days that call was for guns. Out of interest, a Mad Dog is a visual detection of an AIM-120 or 54 launch. It is a large force of indeterminate numbers and formation, and if one were to engage it, you might well end up in a furball, a call indicating known non-friendly and friendly aircraft are in close proximity to each other. Many are intuitive in that home plate is one's home airfield or ship. Others, many of you will know. Try this one. Bingo. Yep, that's the fuel state needed for recovery, whereas Joker is the fuel state above bingo, at which a disengagement or bug out should begin. Buster is another old one, which means to fly at maximum continuous speed in military power, whilst Gate demands maximum speed in American afterburner or British reheat. On the other hand, saunter means to fly at best endurance speed. Some words have even made it into civilian use, since a squawk effectively means the same to both an airline pilot using his ATC transponder and a military pilot with his IFF, identify friend or foe. Be Wilco, I will comply. Literally hundreds, and since I would hate to risk boring you, I will leave you with this. It's something that Colonel Jeff might have said on many an occasion. Please feel free to try to work it out for yourselves. The answer will be on the next show. Winchester, tumbleweed bingo. Spike in my 6. Sandwiched, bogey dope. Parrot dead. Hold hands, scramming home plate weeds. Good luck.
Another awesome job. I don't know why you're hearing us because I have all the mics off.
Okay, there was just someone mumbling in the background, and I'm pretty
Yeah, it was
sure
me. I was mumbling.
No, I could hear it too. It was definitely you. I'm not sure.
Well, that's weird. How is it getting through? I was just explaining
I
how the
was
whole
typing
thing is set
my
up.
text at the same time as Nick, and I could hear an echo for myself. Oddly.
What?
I can't, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Strange.
Hang on. Do you still hear the echo stuff?
Let's see if I talk now. No, I don't think I hear it.
And
I
your
think that was
video's
just
improved markedly.
Yeah, because I upscaled it again, but that means probably that will disappear again. I'm not sure why or how you were getting any audio from us other than the plaintails, because based on what I'm looking at here on the schematic, it would be who knows how. But I do apologize if that distracted from the wonderful plaintails, but those that are listening, who are listening to the audio, 90-something% of the people listening will hear pristine plaintails audio because I'll put the actual original file in there, and you won't hear me mumbling.
No problem. Hey, I just wanted to thank Brian Parrott, who's actually in the chat room right now. It was his idea to cover the phonetic alphabet. And I must admit, when I thought of it as a subject initially, I thought, well, that's going to be a bit short and a bit dry. But actually, once I delved into it, it was quite fascinating and quite amusing, I found anyway. So I hope you enjoyed that.
No, I love that kind of stuff. I was very interested to listen to all of that. That was great.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too.
Cheers. Thanks, Brian. It was a great idea.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I took the opportunity to pop a echo while you were talking about phonetics.
Good thing you didn't take the mic in there, I guess.
Yes.
Well, he usually does, and I'm going, oh, really?
Not again.
Yeah.
All right. Always enjoy his contribution to the plaintails. It's always really interesting. Last week, he did the Alaska 261, which was kind of a little melancholy, actually. It wasn't as upbeat as the phonetic alphabet. Did you want to say anything about that, Nick, regarding some of the feedback we got? Or
yeah, do you have that feedback available? I'm just going to have a quick look in my...
It's in my email. I mean,
I've got
it should be in your email.
Yeah, it was the writer did ask us for not to use his name.
Yes.
So, but he was a first officer on that company at the period, during the period, and he knew the captain involved in that incident on Alaska 261, that crash. And he says that flying into LAX a couple of hours after the crash, radio communications between all aircraft that I heard were professional and normal. There was no hint of an accident. This is important because there had been chatter about the crash on the radio. Had there been, chatter on the crash, about the crash on the radio. It may have compromised safety on my jet or others. It would have been a distraction. I didn't know about the crash until after landing. For those pilots, dispatchers, or operations personnel, if you know about an incident, don't discuss it on the radio or ACARS with non-involved flights, which I think is great advice. And he goes on to say that the crash was almost 18 years ago. Those responsible are gone. Those practices and mindsets are gone. Safety, I believe, is top priority. And I think just the success of Alaska Airlines since that incident is excellent demonstration of how they changed their company thoughts, how they completely turned the company around and turned it into a hugely successful and very safe airline that it is nowadays. So I didn't mean in any way to besmirch the character of Alaska. I told the story just as it was, but 18 years is a long time, and that airline has changed character an enormous lot since then. So
it certainly is one of the top-rated carriers here in the country.
Exactly.
Great reputation in the last decade or more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Certainly. So, having flown with them recently, I can certainly attest to that. So great experience.
Yes. There was no intent to besmirk the reputation of the company.
No, but perhaps I didn't make quite enough of the time that is and the water that's passed under the bridge since that incident.
Yeah. So it's all Nick's fault. So that's the bottom line there.
Got big shoulders.
Let's see. Frick, our friend in South Africa, sent this is Hi Captain Jeff and crew. Congrats on 300. Thank you for the effort and time you guys. He put in quotes, guys, Dr. Steph included, devote to an excellent podcast. Here's to the next 300. Frick. And then he sent in some news, and it's about Boom, the supersonic aircraft startup. Just landed a $10 million investment from Japan Airlines, which is pretty cool. That's they're getting some significant support for this. I think they already have 70-something orders, 75 or something like that.
76.
76. There we go. Very patriotic. Anyway, Boom has 76 pre-orders for a 55-seat plane that it says will be able to slash the flight time from New York to London in just 3 hours and 15 minutes. The firm has said its jetliner, expected to enter service by the mid-2020s, will fly at speeds of Mach 2.2, 10% faster than the British-French joint venture Concorde, which popularized supersonic jet travel in the 70s. Japan's second-largest airline has the option to purchase up to 20 of these airplanes and will assist efforts to hone the aircraft's design and passenger experience. And there were some other airlines as well that I'm not sure if they've named them here in this article, but
Virgin Atlantic is apparently
that's one of them. How many do you guys have pre-ordered? Do you know?
I don't know. I hope we get some, because Virgin Atlantic will give us a lot of competition if Acme.
Oh, I'm sorry. Virgin Atlantic, you said. Okay, I thought you said Acme Red. My bad. Let's see. It doesn't take long for me to stop thinking.
Well, good job. Really fly for 1.5 hours at a time, isn't it?
I know. It's like I can only focus on a very limited amount of time. And we're beyond that already. Okay. Thanks, Frick, for that. Speaking of, he said the guys thing, and we use that term I do anyway, for guys and gals. So everybody's a guy to me.
I call everyone a guy, so it's.
But I was watching. Don't you find that a little confusing in the toilet?
I don't usually meet many guys in the toilet, but not sure where you're going with that one. Anyway, the thing that came to mind is, have you been watching this new series on I'm trying to remember what the network is. It's the series is called The Orville, which is kind of like a new version or an updated version of Star Trek, but it's not Star Trek, but it's kind of like Star Trek-like, and some humor. Seth MacFarlane, the guy that created Family Guy, thank you, and other things. He's also a very talented jazz singer, by the way. A lot of people don't know that. Created this new series, and I'm really enjoying it. But one of the odd things about it is that his first officer, who is a female character, everybody refers to as sir. So they say, yes, sir, instead of ma'am. And I'm thinking, that's weird. You just like every time I hear that when they're saying she gives somebody an order and they say, yes, sir, I'm thinking if I said that to, let's say, my wife or my mom when she was still alive, that would not have been a good thing for me to do. That would have been a big mistake on my part. But apparently that's just the standard term for authority, apparently, in this new series set in the future. But just thought that was kind of odd. And I'm sorry.
Well,
I shared
you
it
know
with
what? Just side tangent here. I have definitely gotten the yes, sir, a couple times because I think anytime you speak up with authority about something, people tend to just respond to a figure who's giving an authoritative command. And then there's always kind of like a weird pause and then, oh, just sorry, I meant, it's like, no, it's fine. Just,
Yeah, I
knew what you meant.
guess you
I knew
can
what you
take
meant.
it the wrong way, I think. Or,
I don't think you have to take it the wrong way. It's just,
Yeah,
they were just trying to respond respectfully and carry out whatever you were asking
Right.
that person to do. So it's fine.
okay. Yes, sir.
Just my take on it.
Now, isn't there one of the branches of the U.S. military that call everyone sir, regardless of their gender? Is it the Marines or?
If that's the case, I have never heard of that,
I'm
but it
happy
could
to
be.
corrected on this because obviously it's not an area of my expertise. But
Yeah. I only have experience with the Air Force, and definitely wasn't the case in the Air Force.
Oh.
Unless they've changed things. Maybe they have. I don't know. Anyway. Really, really good show, by the way, for those of you out there. If you're looking for something else new to watch, The Orville.
Netflix or Amazon or anything? Or
It is Hulu, I think. Or maybe it is
Hulu?
Netflix. Yeah, Hulu.
You don't have Hulu
They don't
over there?
have
in the-
Hulu there.
Hulus. We don't have them on the television.
Huh. Yeah, that's a shame. I think it's
It's
an
on
original,
the internet, yeah. So you probably have Hulu.
Yeah.
It sounds
I don't-
perfect thing for me because I love that kind of sci-fi.
I think you'd really enjoy it, and it kind of throws a little bit of humor in there too. Not like the Family Guy, nothing like the Family Guy.
And I'm sorry, one more time. Can you just say the name of the show?
The Orville, like Orville, right?
Right.
The
Got it.
Orville. Really, really good show, and I don't have the chat room anymore, and I can't get it back because of my computer crash. So I don't know if they're saying anything about it at all. And
Nope.
No,
I highly recommend. And I can't. I think it's a Hulu original, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's.
they're
Netflix.
mentioning the new Star Trek series that is on Netflix that I've been enjoying. but
Right.
that-
This is not. It doesn't associate itself at all with Star Trek. But if you watch this show, you'll understand immediately what I'm talking about. It's it's modeled around that kind of starship kind of atmosphere. And
I must admit we're really
Fox.
going off. Oh, right, okay.
Okay,
I don't
there you
get
go.
that. We're really going off subject here, but I did love the series that Fox once had called Firefly, which was fantastic.
I've heard a lot of people loved that, and they only did one season.
Yep,
and the
that's
fans went, and they I don't want to use the term, but they got upset. And then they
Yes.
what was the movie that they came out with to kind of try to quell some of the Serenity, which didn't quite satisfy everybody. But,
No, it didn't. It tried to wrap it up, but and of course it was Burt Whedon. Burt Whedon, I think that's
Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon, yeah, that directed and produced it and wrote their script. He was brilliant because he did Buffy, the
Vampire Slayer.
So he moved on to other things, but it was so funny. Firefly was so classic. I just brilliant. It was like Cowboys in Space. It was super.
Nice. Okay, well, how's that for getting off track, huh?
Yeah, right.
My apologies for
we
that.
like the tangents. We like the
Kind of
tangents.
aviation.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, this is the time of year where people are putting up their holiday decorations, at least here in the United States. And one of the things, I don't know if it's happening over in the UK and Europe as it is here in the US, but the latest thing is these like laser projectors things that you stick on like a little mini tripod in your front lawn, and it
Everyone
sprays.
in my neighborhood has one at their house.
I think they're a cop out. They
Yeah.
take all the
Right?
work out of decorating the.
I didn't want to
your
spring up
house.
some lights, so I'm just going to project some laser lights onto my house. And
All the falling off of ladders. And
Yeah, where's all the fun?
We're
That's
looking for
if
single
your
bulbs
holiday,
burned out.
Yeah.
You know.
If your holiday decorations didn't end with a trip to the emergency room, you've done something
It takes
wrong.
the fun out of it.
I mean,
Exactly.
just watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You get a little feel for how it really should be.
That's a requirement.
That's right.
Well, you
Christmas
can actually tell my age from how far down the house the lights have. Because they used to be right across the top gutter, just under the roof,
Just,
and
just doing the hedges now in front. Is that
now they're all kind of down at 6 foot level, so I can just stand and go and put them up.
And lastly, you just put a red bulb in the porch light or something.
Well, yeah, well, it depends what kind of a holiday we're having.
So these new things, laser lights. I don't know how powerful they are. I guess they're probably varying degrees of power. But the FAA has come out with a warning saying manufacturers. Let's see. Well, where should I start in this article? According to the FAA, laser. Yeah, okay. Norfolk, Virginia. Holiday laser light displays cover store shelves all across Hampton roads. Manufacturers claim your home will be covered with thousands of lights with just the push of a button. While these displays are easy to set up, the Federal Aviation Administration claims that they could pose a major risk to pilots. According to the FAA, lasers can temporarily blind pilots, which is why it is illegal to point them towards any aircraft while in flight. Many holiday laser light displays come with warnings that tell users not to point them towards people or moving objects, like an aircraft. However, faulty setup can cause these displays to point higher than a home and towards the sky. According to Stephen Thomas, a pilot with 48 years of experience, a laser is virtually invisible until you actually hit it. A laser is virtually invisible until you actually...
It hits something.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not really right. Laser lights can be quite damaging if they hit you directly in the eye. Most times it's a temporary blindness, but you have to read instruments in the air when you're flying, and it can be a problem. Manufacturers suggest buyers set up their displays from the home so that they can easily see how high the display shines on the home. Oh, far from the home. I'm sorry, I missed a word there. Their instructions also tell users to shine the light on a hard surface like the side of a home instead of a tree. That makes a lot of sense.
I see plenty of people pointing them at trees too.
Well, this is also assuming that these people are the bulk of these people are reading.
They're not reading anything.
No, they're just. I mean, they're not even looking at the packaging. They're like, "Ooh, look, this one will change from like Christmas trees to Santa to snowman." So I'm just and they just rip it out of the box and they set it up and it's like all ready to go. And I'm not kidding. I should really go do like a Periscope video or something and walking down my street because everyone has one of these.
And you're enjoying the heck out of it, aren't you?
Can you tell how much I love the laser light decorations? They're my favorite. I think they're great.
If you have some like hot buttered rum before you go walking around, you'll probably have a better attitude.
I might have a better attitude towards. I'm gonna go.
Anyway, so if you could,
sorry, a hot buttered what did you say?
Rum.
Oh, rum. Oh, right. Okay, sorry.
Or a rub, if you prefer.
I had a feeling
beginning with a B. So,
I tell you what, I wouldn't think about lasers at all if I had a hot buttered rub.
Beginning with B. But no, let's not go there. It's probably best if we just move on now.
Okay. Yes.
Well, we fly in there tomorrow, don't we? So we'll have to.
Yeah, that's right. We do fly to Norfolk, Virginia tomorrow. We'll have to see
during the day, though. Thankfully,
see if they're heeding the warnings by the FAA. I don't know. Somehow, to me, this doesn't sound like it's going to be a major problem. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they'd be that powerful. But maybe they are. I don't know. What do I know? I'm not the FAA, who I love and adore.
I just used to love going around the markets in Hong Kong where these things, lasers of enormous power, are just sold to anyone who pitches up. And they had these ones that did all the Christmassy stuff. And this is years ago, so it just shows how old they were in China. And they would just point it at a skyscraper beside the market and just light up the side of the skyscraper.
Wow.
I was just thinking about all the people who were sitting inside this huge skyscraper. They must, have these lasers flashing around their rooms.
Well, you think that's bad. Nowadays, they make them so powerful that if you point them at the skyscraper, it actually like burns a hole into it. That's powerful.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Wow.
All right. Ryan says, "Hi there. I live in Ottawa, And I was just wondering if I should go to my local college for aviation management and get my ATPL and get a guaranteed interview with Jazz Air, or go to my local flight school, Ottawa Aviation Service, and be guaranteed 6 interviews with 6 different airlines. And if I don't get a job with them, I'm guaranteed a job as an instructor with Ottawa Aviation Service. The only problem is I was going to go with the Ottawa Aviation Service until I heard that the big major airlines look for people with college or university degrees / diplomas. And so he was wondering if we could help him out. What should he do? And now I know that this is Canada. It's not the U.S. But again, Matt worked in pilot recruiting at the regional airline before he got on with us. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is Canada. I don't know exactly what the market is like in Canada. My impression, they were having similar problems finding qualified pilots as well. But, it sounds like with all these guarantees he's talking about, they're trying to figure out ways to get people certainly into flying, but into the industry and specific airlines as well. All I can do is tell you what I would tell people. I did both hiring and recruitment at the regional I was at prior to Acme, and what I would tell the universities we'd go to, the flight schools and stuff like that, the students that were here when I was mentoring people, sounds like what's his name?
It was Ryan, I believe.
Ryan. People in Ryan's shoes who were just getting into it and trying to figure out how to go about it, since there are so many ways to do it. Be wary of guarantees, because what we've mentioned before, earlier in the show, is that this industry in particular changes so fast. What looks like a good avenue today could be a year from now. Certainly in our country, in the U.S., there are plenty of regionals that are offering bonuses, guaranteed interviews with other mainline partners, and the bottom line is, in this country, and I imagine this is assuming it's the same in Canada, is there are so many pilots required. It's a buyer's market, like you and I were talking about earlier. Is you don't want to limit yourself to one specific path. It may seem like the path that you want to take now. It may seem like the obvious path or a good path, but you don't want to limit yourself by saying, okay, well, I'm going to go to X, do X, Y, Z, and this is going to be my path. Because certainly a university program, a degree is talking about is going to take at least 4 years. In 4 years, the outlook might look totally different. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? So, there is going to be a demand for pilots. This we know. Most certainly in this country, elsewhere in the world, Asia, absolutely, the Mideast, of course, but and Canada, I imagine too. So there is going to be a need for pilots. You don't want to limit yourself to one pathway if you can help it. If in Canada the major airlines, Air Canada, I forget the other ones, are requiring degrees right now, who says you're going to require degrees down the road?
It's likely that as the shortage proceeds and gets worse, that's going to fall by the wayside.
Right. That's what everybody is foreseeing in this country. Southwest, and I just heard today, and this is hearsay, mind you, but I think Americans dropped the requirement.
Really? Wow.
Already for the
Southwest has too.
Southwest.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Huh,
so it's happening in this country. It's going to happen elsewhere. It's going to happen in Canada as well. So, certainly cost is a factor as well too. I mean, you're going to lay out a tremendous amount of money, certainly in this country, and I imagine Canada as well, to get a 4-year degree in a very limited field as well, like aviation management. What else are you going to do with an aviation management degree?
Nothing.
So you're going to limit yourself there.
Do a podcast.
You could go into aviation management, obviously.
Exactly. No,
yeah.
Get the minimum.
Manage some
that
aviation
is
out there.
Right. You are in demand, and you will be in demand. As few guarantees as there are in this industry. The one we can pretty much rely on, barring some disaster, is that there is going to be a sustained demand for pilots over at least the next decade. Mm-hmm. So get the minimum required. My advice, and this is just me, get the minimum required in the least amount of time possible to make yourself marketable. In this country, that's just the FAA minimums, which is now ATP minimums. Mm-hmm. I don't even get an ATP because any region will pay to give you your ATP. So get the minimum required while leaving doors open to go anywhere you can in the industry at any given point but also elsewhere in the industry, other industries as well. If aviation doesn't work out for some reason, don't limit yourself to being an aviation manager, whatever that is.
Right.
Go to a community college and get a liberal arts degree, anything. A business degree is what I would recommend. Something in the STEM fields is what I always tell. Something where you can make a career out of with that kind of degree, and then get the minimum required certificates and ratings, whether it's I don't know what governs aviation certification up in Canada, but here in this country it can be 61, 141, whatever is the quickest and most economic way for you to do it. Close to home, whatever's easiest for you. Do it that way, and don't limit yourself to one specific airline through a guaranteed interview or anything like that. Leave your options open would be my advice. I hope that answers his question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's really sound advice. It really echoes a lot of stuff that we've talked about before. The whole thing about college education, for a long time, especially in this country, it has been kind of that stepping stone, that hurdle to getting a job with one of the major airlines here in the U.S. But I agree with you 100%, Matt. I think with the way that the shortage is going and just the way things are changing, that might not be something down the road. But I would also say, like you said, don't close those doors too, because if for some reason you can't hold your medical, something else happens, you can't fly anymore, it's not a bad idea to have another career pathway and make it something that you're interested in, is what I always tell people, because it's the same thing in medicine. To get into medical school, you don't have to have a degree in, some sort of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math background. It could be whatever you want. There's minimum requirements to get in, but it doesn't have to be your main focus of study. So do something that appeals to you, so that on the off chance that something does happen and you're not able to fly anymore, that you have something else that you're interested in that lends itself to a career field. So whatever that is.
Absolutely. Yep. I think that it's the nail on the head. No
yeah. Have a plan B, and whatever you get your college degree in should, I think, be your plan B.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Excellent. It's good to hear that sound advice you're giving, Matt, reflects and echoes what we've been saying for the last couple of years here on the show.
It hasn't changed.
But things change. 10 years from now, you
we
might
won't
have
need
to have
pilots at all, right?
Well, that's true. That's right.
That's
wrong.
Where's the answer?
Yeah, wherever that is. I'm not sure where that is in the layers of windows I have open here. But anyway. Well, with that, anything else you want to cover or talk about before we end the show? It'll be one of our shorter versions. It's going to be around 2.5 hours or so today, maybe a little bit less actually, because of our technical snafu earlier in the show. Or I guess we could go over to the feedback folder and maybe pick out something that you've just been dying to cover. What do you want to do, guys? I will mention, though, quickly, and this is something that Matt and I read yesterday and really enjoyed. Let's see. This is from Tom. He said he just recently started listening to the podcast, and you guys and gals are doing a great job. I hold a CPL here in Australia, but have been out of the industry for a couple of years, basically with a medical issue. As I prepare to get back into it, medicals in 3 weeks, wish me luck. Good luck, Tom.
Good luck.
And let's see, he sent this in November 14.
Oh, so he probably already
right
had
around
that.
now.
Yeah. Let us know how it went, how it goes.
Please do. Anyway, as you have discussed Remembrance Day in the most recent episode, at least at that time, I thought I'd share a blog post which did the rounds a while ago. I stumbled across it on PPRUNE, Pprune, the place where 4 out of 5 pilots are extremely regular. Probably 3 or 4 years ago. I'm not sure if it's apocryphal or what, but if you haven't come across it already, I think it really makes a good read. And then he put a link to this in the show notes, and the site is tailspintales.blogspot.com.au, and the title of it is Last Flight, and it reflects a story of a long retired Navy officer. And hey, Taco.
Sorry, I'm being attacked.
Taco is attacking Dr. Steph as we speak. I think Taco is ready for the show to end But anyway, we'll put a link to this in the show notes. It's about a retired ex-Navy officer flying a particular type of airplane that is not your typical thing that you see at the air shows, the B-17s, the B-24s, etc. This is an airplane made by Lockheed, and the guy thought that they had, didn't have any of them remaining, that they were all scrapped or crashed or whatever. And I don't want to give it away, but it's definitely a really good read. And if it doesn't make you want to, have your eyes leak a little bit, then you're just not human.
It was touching story.
Yeah, very touching story. So thank you, Tom, for that. And I'm sure that our audience will love it. So with that, I think that Taco has basically said, okay, that's it for this show. We're gonna shut this thing down because
Taco
I want to.
Is the ultimate deciding factor in how long APG runs for every week.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to learn more about the show, head over to airlinepilotguide.com, where you'll find information about the crew, the community, merchandise, the coffee fund, and so much more. Again, that's airlinepilotguide.com. And we have the smartphone, tablet apps, and for both iOS and Android platforms. On Android, go to the Google Play Store, and on iOS, the Apple Store, App Store, I guess, and do a search for Airline Pilot Guy, and you'll find it. It's ad-free. It's free to. There's no purchase required, and there are no ads in it. And it's a great companion.
What about all these ads for Acme Red we keep putting into the show, or even mainline Acme? I mean,
yeah, we should be getting some revenue for that, right?
Yeah,
good point.
Exactly.
Good luck.
So I guess our show is not ad free. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying it would certainly help the coffers if they realize what we're doing for them.
We're not receiving any revenue whatsoever, except for those fine people that are part of our Coffee Fund cadre.
Oh yeah, time for another crew log, I think.
I should do one of those every once in a while.
Yeah, that's one of the perks of being part of the Coffee Fund is receiving our periodic.
My last one was 20 minutes long.
I noticed that, but it was well worth it. It was a very interesting one.
I'll have to listen to it.
You should.
Sorry,
and
I will.
If you aren't already part of the Coffee Fund cadre, please consider joining. And just as little as $1 per episode will give you access to all that fine stuff. Okay, social media. We're on social media, and that's free. And how do we follow us?
And I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. But first, I just wanted to say I'm drinking one of the beers. Were these from John Brown?
Yes.
The ones from Canada, the Ransack the Universe Hemisphere IPA. Excellent. Really enjoying this. So thank you very much. And Captain Jeff did get these to me. So thank you, John Brown. Dr. John Brown.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. John.
Yep. Social media. You can find us on Twitter using the handle @APG Crew. We are all there. You can find our individual Twitter handles pinned to the top of that page. You can go over to Facebook, facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Join the community there for all kinds of information about meetups, various topics, and information from the internet that's of interest to the community. So hope to see you there.
All right. And we are also on another social media-ish kind of platform, and its title is Slack. And I'm trying to find.
You've lost Hillel.
Hillel's around here somewhere.
Well, how many bathrooms do you have?
I was going to say it doesn't look like that large of a hotel.
Hang
room.
on, we gotta yell for him. Hillel! You know what? He might be in your room.
Yeah,
we should go and find him. Wait, here he is. Hang on. Let me move out of the way. Wait a minute. Can you hear that?
No,
he's shouting from the room next.
From the other room. Bring me to
Hello, you got to come
to your room.
That's the wrong microphone. Not that microphone. Here it is. Okay, I think he's got the right one now.
Nope.
No, you're still not hearing.
He's
it.
even quieter.
Dumb. He's moved further away.
Where the heck is? What are you doing, Hillel? Okay. Why is that not playing here? Oh.
I think this is going to be a 3-hour show after all.
It really
might
is.
be. It's going to feel like it when I edit it. Let me know if you can hear this.
APG listeners, please join us
No?
on our Slack team. On Slack,
Oh, you
we
could hear
share
it?
news and ideas.
Yeah, we can hear that now.
Suggest episodes
So if you want to restart that, you need the thumbs up.
Just
You're
do
not
that
watching
again. Just like that. Just do
Okay,
it.
here we go.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan meetups and events. To get into the Slack team, please send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @hi11e1, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel @hi11e1, and see you in Slack.
Awesome. Thank you, Hillel, for managing that. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
All right. I think we have a winner.
I used to be such a good pilot till I started APG. I opened doors for little old ladies. I helped them to their seats.
Airline pilot guy.
I fly a mad dog. Airline pilot guy. He can land in heavy fog. I got no friends 'cause I'm always flying. I just don't have the time. But I can land this old plane. I can land it just fine. Airline pilot guy. I fly a mad dog. Airline pilot guy. He can land in heavy fog. Airline pilot guy. I fly a mad dog. Airline pilot guy. He can land in heavy fog.
I was afraid that I didn't have that set up on a fader.
Well, we just
Anyway.
like the abrupt end. That's fine. Just
There we go.
Over and done. Yeah, you need the needle moving across the record.
Right.
There's a bit
Record
more.
scratch. Yeah. I accidentally hit that one, actually. It sounded like I did that on purpose. No.
So, with your computer under the desk, are you actually doing all this with your toes?
No. So I have an external monitor that's a USB 3 monitor. That's a travel monitor that is connected via USB 3 to the USB hub. And then there's the interface. But the
Carrying
computer...
a monitor with you now?
Well, it's like... But it's tiny. It's like it's thin. It's like it hardly weighs a thing. It weighs less than an iPad.
Oh, okay.
But it's a 15.6-inch monitor. So for comparison, there's the iPad right there, which is closer to the camera right now than that. So it's nice and light. It's very light, and it's just a USB 3 powered thing for people that want to have a separate monitor. But I'm just using it as a primary monitor. The laptop is down on the floor next to the window where it's nice and cold. And but I've noticed that it wasn't completely foolproof or technology proof because twice now this whole thing has crashed. But I think it has more to do with audio hijack and what I was doing with that than anything else. I think that's what crashed the computer. I don't know. So, as usual, it's not the final solution.
Well,
There will be next week. There will be a new setup. So I'm trying.
Yes, there will be. Yes.
The 303rd setup.
I might actually go back to just lugging around the big mixer, the hardware mixer, and just
we like your empirical attitude towards our show, Jeff.
Yes.
it's just nothing but a big, huge experiment in my mind.
Exactly right.
And the reason why I have Steph and Captain Nick and Dana is to make it professional. I'm just here fooling around.
I don't want to have to wear that on my shoulders,
We don't need that kind of responsibility over here.
No.
Well, whether you want it or not, you have it. Oh. Okay, Matt, thanks again for joining us and
My pleasure.
Wasting your precious time on a layover.
What else would I do around?
We're going to go into Bricktown and get something to eat.
I got tacos on the mind for some reason.
Ooh, okay, that sounds good.
Bricktown.
Yeah, why is that?
Detroit,
I know why. It's an area of in downtown Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City. There's one in Detroit.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, we're in Oklahoma City. I guess I never mentioned that, did I? Well, I guess I did at the very, very beginning when I said studio whatever in Oklahoma City. But we were here all day. We got in last night, and we've been here all day. And then tomorrow we end up going through Atlanta 2 legs, I guess, just to Norfolk, Virginia. And then nice long layover there. And then 3 legs on Friday. Get to go up to Cleveland again. And then Deadhead, yay, back home.
We're done by noon.
Yeah.
Great.
Is it very cold in Oklahoma City or not too bad?
It's cold, but not super cold.
This is all working its way this direction. I'm not excited for it.
I thought it was going to be freezing out here because that front came through that now should have pushed through the Carolinas, right? But it was 50 and sunny, a little breeze. I walked around a little bit. It was beautiful. So
I mean,
not as cold as I thought it'd be.
If you got in the shade and the wind was blowing a little bit, it was a little chilly.
I just keep looking at this forecast for Chicago on Saturday, and it's like high of 30, snow 40% chance. I'm like,
30. That's warm for Chicago at this time of year, isn't it?
I guess. I've become so spoiled.
I think the coldest I've ever been in my life was one time walking in Chicago. Wind was coming in off
the lake, and it's just funneling down the street, and you just go, whoa, so cool.
I know.
My very first Chicago was minus 15 outside, and it was the wind. God knows what the wind chill factor was, and it was about this time of year, and everyone was going around shopping, and there were guys on the street corners doing ice carvings. We came out of our hotel, and we made it 1 block, and we went past a TGI. No, we went past a TGI. And we just had to go straight in there because
this is where we're going.
So
it's far enough. Can't cope anymore.
My native Chicago card has been revoked because I certainly remember winter. I mean, one of my favorite stories to tell is I can remember school being canceled sometime in the winter because it was so cold they couldn't get the buses to start. It wasn't because of snow. It wasn't because of anything like that. It was so cold
the temperature
would not start. I learned how to ice skate outside when I was a kid because it frequently was cold enough that the lakes and reservoirs and creeks were frozen. So. But I've become spoiled by the South, and
you've become a
southerner,
a sissy.
My wife's from South Georgia. She told me, looking at the forecast, you were looking at stuff. She was like, "Oh, it's going to be freezing next week. It's going to be in the 20s."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, I'm from Milwaukee originally. I was born in Milwaukee." In the Midwest.
So you know how it is.
20s is balmy.
Yeah. Short sleeve shirt weather.
Bring out the grill. Watch some football outside. It's all good. Yeah.
You're right though. At 48 degrees right now, so it's actually quite warm outside right now. That time I was in Chicago with that wind chill, it was so cold, I was just like uncontrollably laughing. And it wasn't because I was enjoying it. It was just like I couldn't help myself. It was like, I think I'm going to die.
The absurdity.
I was going hysterical. Like, there's no way this could possibly be this cold.
People choose to live in these places.
Wow. Anyway, well, thanks again, Nick, for staying up so late. I hope that Jilly's operation goes flawlessly.
Yes. Please send our best to Jilly.
I certainly will.
Be thinking of her.
She's actually moved to the spare room because she can't stand hearing me laugh.
Like, how dare you have a good time?
Exactly. Apparently my voice carries, and she's moved to the other end of the house. So
oh boy. Hopefully we didn't get you in trouble.
Oh no! I mean, this is good. This actually is fine. We finished nice and quick. It's just coming up to midnight. I'll
nice.
get a decent night's sleep, and I'm already dropping the audio into
I should stop mine.
So it should be ready for you whenever you want it.
Excellent. Very good, very good. Okay, we're going to shut it down, get a bite to eat, and then get ourselves to bed because it's an early start in the morning as well. All right. Thanks, everybody in the chat room for putting up with us again this week. And next week, I'm not sure when we're going to be doing it, but it'll be sometime. I think my schedule next week is completely up in the air.
It'll be sometime next week.
It'll be sometime next week, I'm sure, or the week after.
Yeah.
All right.
Or whenever.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.